For nearly 14 long years, a substantial portion of my husband's hard-earned wages disappeared each month, faithfully channeled to his ailing sister. It was a ritual as predictable as the sunrise, a deeply ingrained habit that spoke volumes of his unwavering devotion. My unsuspecting heart never once faltered, never once whispered a doubt, until that fateful day when circumstances finally forced a face-to-face encounter with the woman who had, for so long, existed only as a shadowed presence in our financial ledger. The truth, when it finally emerged from the shadows, was not merely a detail but a tectonic shift, a revelation that didn't just alter my perception but fundamentally reshaped the very foundations of my existence, charting an irreversible course for the rest of my life. Good morning, dear viewers, wherever you may be tuning in from. My name is Teresa, and I find myself at the remarkable age of 76. Today, with a blend of trepidation and resolve, I am finally unburdening myself of a story from my life, a profound secret I've carried close to my chest for what feels like an eternity. Before I delve into the intricacies of this narrative, a quick request: if you're watching this now, if these words resonate even a little, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up, it truly helps. And if you haven't already, do consider subscribing to the channel. Lastly, I'd love to know where you're sharing this moment from. Drop a comment below. Your engagement empowers me, giving me the courage to continue laying bare these chapters of my life for you all. Now, let's turn back the clock, shall we? All the way to 1965. I was a mere 16 years old, a girl teetering on the cusp of womanhood, when fate, or perhaps just sheer coincidence, brought Arnold into my life. He was everything a young woman in those days could hope for, undeniably handsome, with a kind of rugged charm that came from honest labor, and remarkably hardworking. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, embodying the promise of a bright future as a truck driver. Back then, you see, being a trucker wasn't just a job, it was a respected profession, a vital artery in the nation's burgeoning economy. The pay, for someone like Arnold, was genuinely good, offering a pathway to stability and a comfortable life. And I, a simple girl hailing from the sprawling suburbs of Chicago, the daughter of farmers who had left the dusty fields behind for the city's promises of a better existence, saw in him not just a man, but the very embodiment of a chance, a tangible opportunity to build the family, the future I so deeply yearned for. We were swept up in a whirlwind romance, the kind that feels inevitable when you're young and full of dreams. We married a mere 6 months after our first meeting. My mother, bless her practical heart, voiced her concerns, her brow furrowed with a mother's worry. "It's far too fast, Teresa," she'd admonish, her voice laced with caution. "You barely know the man." But that was simply the way of things back then, wasn't it? You fell in love, often intensely and swiftly, and you got married with a speed that might seem astonishing by today's standards. It wasn't like the modern era, where couples often opt for cohabitation, a trial period to meticulously assess compatibility and see if the partnership truly works out. No, for us, marriage was a sacred covenant, a public declaration. We stood before God in a hallowed church, adorned in white veil and gown, seeking divine blessing for a union we fervently prayed would endure, not just for years, but forever. Our beginning was, as it often is for most young couples carving out a life from scratch, undeniably difficult. We called home a cramped bedroom and kitchen unit, tucked away in the very back of his aunt's modest house, a small space, but it was ours, for a time. Arnold's profession meant constant travel, his life defined by the hum of the engine and the ribbon of highway stretching between Chicago, Indianapolis, and New York. Sometimes, he'd be gone for 3, even 4 days at a stretch. It was a harsh reality, but one I understood, for it was his calling, his sacrifice for our nascent family. He would always reiterate, his voice earnest, "Teresa, every mile I drive across this country, every hour away, it's for you, for the life we are going to build together." Soon enough, our small world expanded. Our first child, Charles Edward, a robust baby boy, arrived, filling our tiny dwelling with the cries and joys of new life. Just 2 short years later, our sweet Mary Elizabeth made her entrance, a delicate counterpoint to her boisterous brother. And then, 3 years after that, Joseph Andrew completed our trio. 3 precious children to nurture, to guide, to raise. And there I was, a young mother, perpetually in motion, expertly juggling the endless cycle of diapers, bottles, and the relentless demands of housekeeping, while Arnold, our anchor and provider, continued his tireless journeys on the open road. It was sometime during our second year of marriage, in a quiet moment between trips, that he first spoke to me about his sister, Celia. According to Arnold, she resided in Indianapolis and was battling significant health problems. He never offered specifics, never delved into the exact nature of her illness, merely stating with a somber tone that it was serious and required constant help. And so, every single month, with a steadfastness that never once wavered, he would meticulously set aside a substantial portion of his hard-earned salary, carefully preparing an envelope to send directly to her. "Teresa," he would tell me, his voice soft yet firm, those earnest brown eyes holding my gaze, "she's my only sister. Our parents are gone now, truly gone. We only have each other left in this world. I simply cannot abandon her, can I?" And I, in my youthful naivete, believed him without question. More than that, I found it beautiful, truly beautiful, that profound bond of brotherly love, that deep-seated concern that transcended distance and hardship. Yet, there were moments, raw and painfully vivid, when money at home became desperately tight. Times when we couldn't even scrounge enough for basic school supplies for the children, or when Charles Edward's worn-through sneakers were held together by sheer hope and thread. In those crushing moments, my gaze would inevitably drift to the envelope Arnold had earmarked for Celia, a pang of something akin to resentment, or perhaps just profound sadness, tightening in my chest. But I never, not once, ever voiced a single question, never dared to challenge his decision. It was his family, after all. A sacred bond. And I, as a dutiful wife, respected that unspoken boundary. The years, as they always do, simply rolled on. Our life, though never lavish, remained consistently simple yet remarkably stable. We eventually moved into a modest two-story house nestled comfortably in the suburbs, a tangible testament to Arnold's hard work. The children thrived, attending the local public school, their laughter echoing through our small home. To help make ends meet, to contribute whatever I could, I took in laundry from neighbors, diligently washing and ironing clothes, the rhythmic hiss of the iron a familiar comfort. We never went hungry, not truly. Arnold, despite the considerable portion of his salary that vanished monthly into Celia's care, earned reasonably well as a truck driver. It was a peculiar arrangement, yes, something I found strange in the quiet corners of my mind, but not strange enough to openly question. What truly struck me as odd, yet which I still foolishly dismissed, was the perplexing absence of this sister-in-law from our lives. We never visited her. During holidays, those cherished times meant for family gatherings, or on birthdays, there was never a single invitation extended to meet her, to welcome her into our circle. Whenever I, with hopeful trepidation, dared to suggest a visit, Arnold would skillfully, almost instinctively, change the subject. He'd explain, always with a tone of carefully constructed concern, that Celia was very private, that she didn't like visitors, and that her home environment needed to be strictly controlled because of her illness. "One day we will, Teresa, I promise," he'd always reassure me, his voice gentle but firm, "but now is simply not a good time." And I, raised as I was to be a good wife, taught implicitly not to question my husband's decisions, simply accepted it. Today, looking back through the prism of experience, I often find myself wondering, with a profound ache of regret, how I could have been so utterly blind, so incredibly naive. But in those days, that was simply the societal expectation, wasn't it? Women accepted, they stayed quiet, they trusted implicitly. Our routine was an unvarying rhythm. Arnold would leave for his long-haul trips, return home for a precious few days, and then, inevitably, depart again. When he announced he was heading to New York, those trips stretched out even longer, typically encompassing a whole week. "It's much farther away, Teresa," he would explain, his voice tinged with a weariness that I misinterpreted as dedication. "And the New York loads, they always pay so much more." To my trusting heart, his explanations always made perfect sense. Then came 1978. We had been married for 13 years, a baker's dozen of shared dreams and sacrifices, and it was in this year that subtle cracks began to appear in the seemingly unshakable foundation of our life. Our children were growing, blossoming into their own distinct personalities. Charles Edward was a spirited 12, Mary Elizabeth a gentle 10, and Joseph Andrew, our youngest, a curious 7-year-old. By then, I had managed to secure a job as a sewing assistant in a small clothing factory, conveniently located not far from our home. The pay wasn't substantial, certainly not life-changing, but every penny helped with the mounting expenses, and, truth be told, I genuinely enjoyed the work. I had always possessed a natural knack for sewing, a skill I'd inherited and honed from my mother since I was a little girl, the rhythmic whir of the machine a comforting drone. That particular March of 1978, I remember it with a vividness that feels like yesterday. I was in the midst of my familiar ritual, carefully arranging Arnold's belongings for yet another trip to New York. As was my custom, a silent testament to my devotion, I had washed and impeccably ironed his shirts, meticulously sorted his socks, and diligently checked his uniform for any missing buttons or loose threads. It was a routine I had faithfully, almost reverently, followed for years. I picked up his heavy navy blue coat, the very one he always wore on his long journeys, intending to give it a quick once-over, to check if it needed any minor repairs before he left. That's when my fingers brushed against something unexpected in the inside pocket. My hand instinctively delved deeper, and I pulled out a small, homemade birthday card, haphazardly decorated with cheerful, colorful dots. My heart gave a sudden, sickening lurch. I opened the card, my eyes scanning the handwritten message, and read, "Happy birthday, my love. May God give you many years of life and health to continue being the wonderful father and husband you are. With all our love, Celia and Deborah." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief. I reread those words, my eyes tracing each letter, over and over again, desperately trying to construct some logical explanation, some rationalization that could reconcile this jarring discovery with the life I thought I knew. Father? My husband, Arnold. But who was Deborah? And more pressingly, why was his supposedly sick sister, the one he claimed was recuperating from a bad flu, calling him my love and husband? The words, etched in looping, elegant script on the cream-colored card, seemed to mock me, echoing in the sudden, cavernous silence of the kitchen. Arnold's actual birthday had been nearly a month ago, in early February. I had poured my heart into that day, baking a simple yet lovingly decorated chocolate cake, his favorite, adorned with just enough sprinkles to make it festive. I'd even managed to squirrel away some money for a practical gift, a brand new, supple leather wallet, a much-needed upgrade from his old one, which was so worn its edges were fraying and its contents barely contained. Yet, his reaction then had been startlingly subdued. He'd barely touched the cake, offering only a perfunctory, "It's delicious, honey, but I'm just so tired from the trip." His thanks for the wallet had been equally flat, lacking any genuine warmth or enthusiasm. Now, a month later, with those damning words seared into my mind, the chilling truth clicked into place, illuminating the bleak landscape of his indifference. Of course, he'd already celebrated. He'd undoubtedly shared cake, laughter, and perhaps even a more passionate birthday kiss with them, whoever this mysterious Deborah and her circle truly were. The coldness I'd felt on his birthday was no longer a mystery, it was a painful confirmation. My hands, usually steady from years of household chores, trembled uncontrollably as I folded the incriminating card and slid it deep into the pocket of my apron. My first instinct, a primal scream demanding an explanation, warred with a colder, more calculating voice within me. "Not now," it whispered. "Not yet." Something deeper, a survival instinct perhaps, told me I needed more. More fragments of proof, more pieces to the puzzle, before I could possibly confront him and unravel this horrifying tapestry. I needed to understand the full scope of the deception before I dared to make any accusations. The very next day, Arnold, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in my world, left for what he called another trip to New York. He kissed me on the forehead, a familiar gesture that now felt tainted, a casual brush of deceit. He hugged the children, promising a chocolate bar for each upon his return, a scene so achingly normal, so ingrained in our family routine. But beneath the veneer of this everyday familiarity, a grotesque shadow had fallen. An insidious doubt, like a corrosive acid, was already beginning to eat away at the foundations of my marriage, gnawing at my peace of mind. In the days that bled into the following week, my senses were unnaturally heightened. Every flicker of his eye, every casual word, every minute detail became a potential clue, a thread in the tangled web of his secret life. I became a silent detective in my own home, sifting through the mundane for any anomaly. But the heavy burden of suspicion remained mine alone. I couldn't bring myself to mention it to anyone, not even Louise, my best friend, who lived just next door and was usually my confidant. The pain, the raw, festering suspicion, was a private torment, a secret I guarded fiercely, even from those closest to me. Then, on Thursday of that same week, a telephone call shattered the fragile illusion of normalcy. The phone, a relatively new addition to our home and a source of considerable neighborhood pride, back then, having a telephone was still quite rare, a mark of modest prosperity that we'd only managed to install a few months prior, rang jarringly around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. "Hello?" I answered, my voice still carrying the polite lilt of a homemaker. "Good afternoon," a crisp, professional voice responded. "This is Star Road Trucking Company. Could I please speak with Mr. Arnold?" A flicker of confusion. "He's not here," I explained, "he's traveling." "I'm his wife, Teresa." "Mrs. Teresa, we urgently need to speak with him," the voice pressed, urgency coloring his tone. "We have a load for New York that absolutely needs to leave today." The driver who was supposed to take it had a problem, and we immediately thought of Arnold. My confusion deepened, twisting into a knot of unease. "But he's already in New York," I stated, the words feeling strange even as I spoke them. "He left Monday morning. He should be returning home soon." There was a pregnant, unnerving silence on the other end of the line, a pause that stretched into an eternity. Finally, the man spoke again, his voice now laced with a bewildered incredulity. "In New York?" "Impossible, ma'am. The load he was scheduled to take only got ready last night. He didn't pick up any load for New York this week. He couldn't have." It felt as if the solid ground beneath my feet had suddenly dissolved, opening into a terrifying abyss. The world tilted. My carefully constructed reality splintered. My voice, already a strained whisper, trembled uncontrollably as I tried to articulate a response, to cling to the fragments of what I believed to be true. "There must be some mistake," I insisted, my voice barely audible. "My husband left for New York on Monday. He's worked for you for over 15 years. Surely, you know him." "Ma'am, we know." "That's precisely why we're calling him," the man reiterated, his tone softening slightly, perhaps sensing my distress. "But he definitively did not pick up any load for New York this week. Perhaps you're confused?" "Confused?" I slammed the receiver down with a hand that still shook violently, the sound echoing the turmoil inside me. No, I wasn't confused. The memory was stark, crystal clear. Arnold had told me, unequivocally, he was going to New York. I had watched him. He had kissed my forehead, a last, false intimacy. He had hugged our children, his arms enveloping them in a cruel charade. He had walked out the door with his well-worn travel bag, a familiar silhouette against the morning light. Where, then, had he gone? The doubt, once a shadow, now metastasized into a virulent tumor, consuming every corner of my mind. That same week, a few days later, while meticulously sifting through stacks of papers to find the children's birth certificates and vaccination records for school re-enrollment, I opened the bottom drawer of Arnold's filing cabinet, a drawer he typically kept locked, but which, on this fateful day, was inexplicably ajar. At the very bottom, tucked beneath a jumble of old tax documents and insurance papers, I discovered two items that slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. First, a checkbook from a bank I didn't recognize, certainly not our joint account. And then, an unmarked envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper with the name, Celia, and an address in Indianapolis. With a heart hammering against my ribs, I meticulously copied the Indianapolis address onto a small slip of paper. I then tucked this devastating piece of evidence, this proof of a secret life, behind the framed photograph of our wedding portrait, the one proudly displayed on our mantelpiece, a testament to the day we had stood before God and our loved ones, vowing eternal fidelity. The bitter irony did not escape me. It gnawed at my soul, the stark contrast between the sacred vows in the image and the unfolding betrayal hidden just behind it. The days that followed were a torturous blur, each one steeped in an agonizing cocktail of dread and desperation. I knew, with a terrible certainty, that I needed to unearth the truth, to rip away the veil of deceit. Yet, a paralyzing fear gripped me. What horrors might I uncover? What if Arnold had not merely a mistress, but an entirely separate, fully formed family? What if this Deborah mentioned in the birthday card was not a sister, but a daughter from another life? How could I possibly confront such a shattering reality, a single mother with 3 young children and virtually no professional experience, adrift in a sea of financial and emotional uncertainty? But despite my outward appearance, often perceived as fragile, I had always possessed a core of resolute courage, a quiet determination that had seen me through life's previous challenges. I made a silent vow: I would go to Indianapolis. I would seek out that address. I would discover who Celia truly was, and what her existence meant to the man I had married. My opportunity arose 2 weeks later, when Arnold announced his next trip to New York. On Friday morning, as soon as he had departed, I took the children next door to Louise's house. I need to take care of some urgent business in Indianapolis, I explained, offering no further details, my voice carefully modulated to betray none of the tempest raging within me. I'll be back tomorrow night. Could you possibly watch the children for me? Louise, ever the steadfast and understanding friend, readily agreed, her kind eyes likely noting the subtle tension in my posture, the uncharacteristic tremor in my voice, but respecting my unspoken need for privacy. From its hiding place, a rusty tin of hot chocolate at the very back of the kitchen cabinet, I retrieved my meager savings. It wasn't a fortune, certainly, but it was enough to cover a round-trip bus fare to Indianapolis and leave a small cushion for unforeseen emergencies. Into my purse, I carefully placed the damning birthday card. It was the only tangible piece of evidence I carried, a physical manifestation of my growing nightmare. I donned my best dress, a light blue frock adorned with delicate floral patterns, one I had meticulously sewn myself. I meticulously combed my hair until every strand was in place and applied a touch of subtle lipstick, determined to project an image of composure, to appear presentable for whatever devastating truth awaited me at that address in Indianapolis. I boarded the bus at the station just as the first rays of dawn pierced the morning sky. The journey to Indianapolis was estimated to take about 3 hours, but to me, each minute stretched into an agonizing eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs with such a frantic rhythm that I was certain the other passengers could hear its desperate thrumming. What would I discover? Was I on the precipice of finding out that my entire married life, all those years of shared dreams and intimate moments, had been nothing more than an elaborate, cruel lie? Or, by some miraculous twist of fate, would there be a perfectly rational explanation for all this, allowing me to return home, relieved, perhaps even laughing at the wild, fertile imagination that had tormented me for weeks? Upon my arrival in Indianapolis, I disembarked the long-distance coach and immediately transferred to a city bus that would transport me to the neighborhood indicated on the mysterious address. It was a decidedly pleasant area, distinctly more affluent than my own, with manicured lawns and stately homes. My previous neighborhood. Here, the houses commanded a grander presence, their facades stretching wider, their elegant designs hinting at more substantial means. The gardens weren't merely maintained, they were meticulously curated, bursting with vibrant, healthy blooms and manicured hedges that spoke of dedicated care and perhaps a professional touch. The streets, too, were noticeably cleaner, pristine and free of the usual urban clutter, reflecting a higher standard of living and perhaps a community with a shared pride in its appearance. After what felt like an interminable journey, filled with a growing sense of dread and anticipation, I finally arrived at the specified address. It was a charming corner house, bathed in a soft, inviting shade of buttercup yellow, a color that, under different circumstances, might have exuded warmth and welcome. A truly beautiful garden, a riot of meticulously tended flowers and verdant foliage, embraced the front of the property, creating a picturesque facade. Intriguingly, what seemed to be a modest shop had been cleverly integrated into the garage space, its presence subtly indicated. A discreet, elegantly crafted wooden sign, perhaps hand-painted with a delicate flourish, announced Celia's Atelier, custom clothing. It spoke of bespoke craftsmanship and personalized service, a stark contrast to the unraveling order of my own life. As I stood before the threshold, a profound wave of apprehension washed over me. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady the frantic drumbeat in my chest, and pushed open the gate. The gentle chime of the doorbell, though soft, reverberated through my already frayed nerves, making my heart lurch violently. This wasn't just another errand, this was the precipice. I was standing on the brink of a truth, a revelation so monumental, so utterly devastating, that I knew, with chilling certainty, it would irrevocably alter the course of my life, severing it into a before and an after with brutal finality. Stepping across the threshold, I entered the small, yet thoughtfully designed, atelier. My immediate focus was on trying desperately to control the almost uncontrollable trembling of my hands, a visible manifestation of the emotional tempest raging within me. The shop itself was undeniably beautiful, a testament to meticulous organization and a keen eye for aesthetics. Various exquisite clothing items, from elegant dresses to tailored separates, were artfully displayed on sleek, modern racks and poised mannequins, each piece seemingly whispering tales of sophisticated style. Along the shelves, an array of colorful fabrics was impeccably arranged, silks shimmering, velvets gleaming, linens crisp, each roll radiating an aura of undeniable luxury. They were a world apart, far more opulent and refined than the humble scraps and remnants I was accustomed to working with back home, a stark visual representation of the two disparate worlds I was about to confront. Indeed, it was a welcoming, distinctly feminine environment, imbued with an air of creative calm and refined taste, a space that, had I arrived under any other circumstances, I would undoubtedly have admired, perhaps even envied, for its charm and elegance. But at this agonizing moment, paradoxically, each carefully chosen detail, the soft lighting, the delicate floral arrangements, the inviting scent of fresh fabric, only served to magnify my burgeoning anguish, tightening the vice around my heart and intensifying the sense of betrayal that was already suffocating me. My internal turmoil was abruptly interrupted when a young girl emerged from the back of the shop, her presence quiet and unassuming. She appeared to be no older than 14, perhaps on the cusp of womanhood, with long, lustrous brown hair neatly gathered into a single, elegant braid that cascaded down her back. And then I saw her eyes. My God, those eyes. They were an exact, unnerving replica of my son Charles Edward's eyes, that particular shade, that unique glint, that undeniable spark. And, in an even more crushing realization, they were absolutely, chillingly identical to Arnold's. A cold dread snaked its way through me, confirming the deepest, most terrifying suspicions I had been battling. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you?" she inquired, her voice bright and unburdened, accompanied by a perfectly friendly, innocent smile that, in that instant, felt like a dagger to my soul. For what felt like an eternity, though it was likely only a few agonizing seconds, I stood utterly paralyzed, rooted to the spot, unable to move or speak. My gaze, however, was sharp and unblinking, meticulously devouring every discernible detail of that young face before me. I traced the delicate curve of her nose, the subtle yet distinctive line of her slightly squared chin, and even observed the endearing way she tilted her head ever so slightly to the side when she smiled. It was all there, a horrifying mosaic of resemblances. Every single feature, every innocent mannerism, echoed Arnold, a living, breathing testament to his deception. My throat felt constricted, as if a hand had tightened around it, but I finally managed to push out a whisper, barely audible, "I'm looking for Celia." "Oh, my mom just stepped out to buy some materials," she explained cheerfully, completely unaware of the seismic shift occurring within me, "but my dad is home. Would you like to speak with him instead?" "My dad?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign and heavy on my tongue. Those two seemingly innocuous words, simple yet utterly devastating, slammed shut the door on any lingering doubt. They were the final, irrefutable confirmation of what my heart, with its dreadful intuition, had already screamed at me. This girl, Deborah, was indeed the one from the birthday card, the smiling child who had unwittingly exposed the dark secret. She was my husband's daughter, born of another woman, a stark and painful embodiment of his betrayal. "Yes, please," I heard myself reply automatically, almost reflexively, the words escaping before my conscious mind could fully process the implication. Despite the crushing confirmation, a part of me was still utterly unprepared, completely blindsided by the raw, brutal reality of what was inevitably about to unfold. "Dad." Deborah's innocent voice cut through the heavy air, echoing toward the back of the house with a joyous, unconcerned shout, "There's a customer here looking for you." The seconds that followed stretched out, elongating into an agonizing eternity, each tick of the imaginary clock amplifying my dread. I heard the distinct sound of approaching footsteps, slow and deliberate at first, then quickening, until finally, standing starkly in the doorway that served as the sole partition between the vibrant shop and the private residence, was Arnold. My husband. The man who, at that very precise moment, should have been hundreds of miles away, behind the wheel of a truck, faithfully driving a delivery to New York, living out the lie he had so carefully constructed for me. Our eyes met across the small space, and the instant recognition that flashed between us was devastating. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as all the color drained from his face, leaving it ash-gray, stark white with a chilling pallor. His eyes, usually so familiar, widened in an expression of pure, unadulterated terror, an almost primal fear that seemed to freeze him in place. For a fleeting instant, it truly seemed as if he had encountered a specter, a phantom from another realm. And perhaps, in a profoundly ironic sense, that's exactly what I was, the living, breathing ghost of the life he had so meticulously constructed upon a foundation of deceit and betrayal, finally materializing to collect the staggering debts of his myriad lies. "Teresa," he finally managed to murmur, his voice so faint, so utterly stripped of its usual bravado, that I almost didn't catch it over the pounding in my ears. Deborah, sensing the abrupt shift in atmosphere, looked from one of us to the other, her young face etched with innocent confusion. "You know each other?" she inquired, her voice a fragile thread of bewilderment. Before either Arnold or I could formulate any kind of response, before the truth could begin to awkwardly untangle itself, the front door swung open, and a woman entered, laden with several shopping bags. She was undeniably pretty, appearing to be about my age, perhaps even a few years younger, with perfectly coiffed, well-groomed hair, a confident slash of red lipstick, and an elegant dress that, with a bitter pang of realization, I knew had to have cost more than every single item of clothing in my own wardrobe combined. "I'm back, honey," she announced cheerfully, her voice bright and unconcerned, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension in the room. "I found that perfect fabric Mrs. Wilson wanted for the wedding dress." Her words trailed off as her eyes landed on me, and she stopped dead in her tracks, a sudden, almost comical, halt to her confident stride. A polite, albeit strained, smile touched her lips as she offered, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we had a customer." "Celia," Arnold finally managed to utter, his voice a raw, choked rasp, barely able to force out her name. "This is Teresa." The introduction hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Celia looked at me, her gaze initially blank with a polite but total lack of understanding. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, her features began to shift, a terrifying transformation playing out across her face. First came a flicker of confusion, quickly followed by a widening surprise, a dawning realization. And then, undeniably, inescapably, the very same expression of profound, visceral horror I had just witnessed contorting Arnold's features settled upon hers, stripping away her composure and leaving her equally exposed. "Teresa, she began, the word catching in her throat, left unfinished, a phantom echo of wife hanging unspoken in the charged atmosphere. But she didn't need to complete the sentence, didn't need to articulate the devastating truth. The look in her eyes, the sudden, sharp intake of breath, confirmed it all. She knew, with an agonizing certainty, exactly who I was and the catastrophic role I played in her meticulously constructed world. With hands that were now visibly trembling, betraying the last vestiges of my self-control, I reached into my purse, extracted the incriminating birthday card, and held it up between us like an accusation, a silent, damning piece of evidence. "I found this in his coat," I stated, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tempest within. With a sudden, sharp thud that resonated through the tense silence, Celia's shopping bags slipped from her nerveless fingers, tumbling to the floor, their contents scattering slightly. Deborah, her young face now a mask of profound confusion, looked desperately from one adult to the other, her innocent eyes wide with a desperate plea for comprehension, trying in vain to piece together the shattered fragments of reality. "Mom? Dad? Who is she?" she cried out, her voice barely a whisper of bewildered anguish. "Deborah, sweetie, please go to your room," Celia pleaded, her voice choked with a mixture of panic and a desperate attempt to protect her daughter from the unfolding catastrophe. But the girl, now frozen in a stance of defiant bewilderment, didn't budge, her gaze fixed on the adults, demanding answers. "No," I interjected, surprised by the unexpected firmness and clarity in my own voice, which seemed to cut through the rising hysteria. "She has the right to know. She has an absolute right to the truth, however painful it may be," I added, my gaze softening slightly as I looked at the child. After all, she is also a victim in this heartbreaking story, caught in the devastating wake of his lies. I turned my full attention to the young girl, whose beautiful, familiar eyes were now welling up, filled not just with confusion but with an unmistakable, blossoming fear. Taking another steadying breath, I delivered the devastating facts, each word a hammer blow to her innocent world. "My name is Teresa," I stated, my voice deliberately calm. "And I have been married to your father for 13 years. We have 3 children together." The girl's face, already pale, contorted in an expression of raw, visceral shock, a sudden, almost violent spasm of disbelief. Her gaze darted frantically from her father, then to her mother, her eyes silently, desperately pleading, searching for some vehement denial, some flicker of a sign, any indication at all, that what I was saying was a cruel, impossible lie. But their profound, guilt-laden silence, heavy and suffocating, confirmed everything, shattering her world into irreparable fragments. "It's not true, is it, Dad?" she begged, her voice now a heartbroken sob, as tears, hot and uncontrolled, began to stream relentlessly down her young face. "Please, Daddy, tell me it's not true." In those excruciating few minutes, Arnold seemed to have visibly aged a decade, the weight of his unraveling lies etched deeply onto his suddenly haggard features. He ran a trembling hand over his face, scrubbing at it as if to erase the terrible reality, a gesture I knew intimately, one he invariably employed whenever he found himself trapped, cornered, with no escape from his own deceptions. "Deborah, I can explain," Arnold stammered, his voice weak, a pathetic attempt to salvage some semblance of control. "Explain what?" Celia fiercely interrupted, her voice now trembling not with fear, but with a raw, blistering anger that ignited the air around them. "Explain that you have another entire family? Explain that every single word, every promise, everything you've ever told us all these years was nothing but a meticulously crafted, cruel lie?" My legs, which had been trembling uncontrollably for what felt like an eternity, finally gave out entirely, unable to bear the physical and emotional weight of the moment. I sank heavily into a nearby chair, the sudden relief of support a stark contrast to the internal turmoil. The shop, which only minutes before had exuded an air of welcoming coziness, now felt stifling, oppressive, its vibrant walls closing in around me like the suffocating confines of a trap. My gaze, now unfocused but drawn by an almost magnetic pull, drifted around the atelier, landing on a cluster of framed photographs adorning one of the walls. There they were, captured in joyous, vibrant images, Arnold, his arm lovingly embracing Celia and Deborah, all 3 of them beaming with genuine happiness. Pictures of family outings, sun-drenched picnics, festive birthday celebrations, and countless other tender, intimate family moments. Each photograph was a fresh stab of pain, a visual catalogue of the years, the experiences, the stolen moments of joy that rightfully belonged to me and to our 3 innocent children, moments that had been mercilessly pilfered and spent in this parallel, deceitful existence. "How long?" I finally managed to ask, my voice hollow but steady, my eyes piercing directly into Arnold's, demanding an answer, demanding the full extent of his depravity. "How long have you been maintaining this monstrous double life, Arnold?" He slowly lowered his head, unable to meet my gaze, his shoulders slumped in a pathetic posture of defeat, the guilt palpable around him. His voice was barely above a whisper as he confessed, "I met Celia in 1963, Teresa, before you. And when Celia became pregnant in 1964, I was already deeply involved with you. I didn't know what to do," he trailed off, his excuse hanging limply in the air. "So," I stated, the realization burning a fresh hole in my gut, "you decided the best course of action was to marry me and simply maintain two separate, entirely fraudulent families?" My voice, against my conscious will, rose sharply, cutting through the silence with an indignant edge. 14 years, Arnold. 14 agonizing years of meticulously constructed lies. Celia, her own eyes now brimming with unshed tears, took a tentative step towards me, her face a mixture of shared anguish and dawning horror. He told me he was a widower when Deborah was born," she choked out, her voice raw with betrayed emotion. "He said he couldn't officially marry me because of some complicated issue with his first wife's pension." I believed him, Teresa. I truly believed every word. In the background, Deborah, who had retreated to lean against the wall, was now quietly, heartbreakingly sobbing, her small body shaking with silent grief. My heart, despite everything, ached profoundly for her, for this innocent girl, caught in the crossfire, born and raised amidst such a tangled web of deceit and endless lies. And the money? My gaze, sharp and accusatory, swung back to Arnold, pinning him with its intensity. "The money," I pressed, each word a hammer blow, "the substantial sums you meticulously claimed to send to your perpetually sick sister every single month? That recurring financial lifeline?" A heavy silence descended, thick and suffocating. He offered no verbal retort, no stammered denial. Yet, he didn't need to. The truth, ugly and undeniable, hung in the air between us like a noxious gas. His guilt, palpable and absolute, was painted across his ashen face for all to see. That money, every single hard-earned dollar, wasn't just any money, it represented the very fabric of the dreams I had woven for our children. It was the potential for a life fundamentally better than the one we painstakingly carved out, funds that could have unlocked enriching courses to broaden their young minds, afforded them decent, unworn clothes that weren't hand-me-downs or factory seconds, or finally provided Mary Elizabeth with the urgent dental treatment she so desperately needed, silencing her quiet complaints of pain. Instead, with a sickening clarity, I understood, those precious resources, our family's future, were callously siphoned off, poured into the upkeep of this other life, this competing family. They funded this undeniably beautiful, well-appointed house, its furnishings gleaming, and this thriving, bustling shop, a monument to his deception. From the corner of the room, Celia, her face streaked with the tracks of recent tears, suddenly broke her silence. "Do you have children?" she whispered, the question barely audible, as she roughly swiped the back of her hand across her face, inadvertently smudging a stark streak of crimson lipstick across her pallid cheek. "3, I responded, my voice strangely steady despite the turmoil within. "Charles Edward, who is 12 and on the cusp of young manhood, Mary Elizabeth, 10, thoughtful and quiet, and Joseph Andrew, just 7, a whirlwind of energy." My voice trailed off, a profound hesitation seizing me. My hand, as if guided by an invisible force, instinctively drifted to rest gently upon my still flat belly. "And," I added, the words feeling both momentous and terrifying, "I've just discovered I'm expecting our 4th. At my revelation, Arnold's head snapped up with such sudden force that it seemed almost violent. The raw, unadulterated shock etched itself deep into every line of his face, draining it of color, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. It was painfully clear, he had no inkling. I had only received the confirmation from the doctor a mere week prior, but amidst the relentless demands of our strained life and the escalating tension I'd felt brewing, the right moment to share such monumental news had stubbornly eluded me. What a cruel, twisted irony of fate, I thought, a bitter laugh catching in my throat. "Pregnant," he croaked, the word a mere breath, his voice barely a whisper, his complexion now as starkly, unsettlingly pale as a freshly laundered sheet. "Yes, Arnold," I affirmed, my voice gaining an edge of steely resolve, "we are indeed having another child. Another innocent life you will, without a doubt, systematically abandon for half of its existence, merely to sustain and indulge this other life you've so meticulously crafted." Celia, witnessing this devastating confession, slowly sank back into her chair, her posture collapsing inward, her face mirroring a destruction as profound and complete as the one tearing through my own soul. "How could you, Arnold?" she cried out, her voice a fractured whisper of disbelief and pain. How could you perpetrate such a heinous betrayal? Not just to us here, but to Deborah, your own daughter, and to her children? She punctuated her anguished question by gesturing wildly towards me, her voice abruptly ceasing, choked with a fresh wave of uncontrollable sobs. We were two entirely separate worlds, she continued, each word a desperate plea, two entire families, each waiting patiently, each clinging to a fervent belief in you, each loving you with every fiber of our being. Arnold, suddenly stripped bare, resembled nothing so much as a wild creature caught in an inescapable trap, eyes darting nervously from my accusing glare to Celia's shattered disbelief. His gaze, desperate and frantic, ping-ponged between us, a silent, frantic search for any words, any sliver of an explanation, that stubbornly refused to materialize on his parched lips. At last, with a desperate, almost pathetic plea, he uttered the only paltry defense he likely imagined could offer him even the slightest reprieve from the crushing weight of his duplicity. "I love you both," he mumbled, his voice reedy and thin, a stark contrast to the gravity of his words. "I genuinely love both families. Please, I beg of you, try to understand. I swear I never wanted to inflict pain on anyone." A tidal wave of incandescent rage, scalding and consuming, surged within me, threatening to engulf every other emotion. "Didn't want to hurt anyone?" I spat, the bitter sarcasm dripping from each syllable like venom. "And pray tell, Arnold, what precisely do you imagine you are accomplishing at this very moment? What, exactly, have you been doing for all these years? Every single time you walked out our door, offering a kiss goodbye and a hollow promise that you were off to work hard to secure a better life for us, you were, in fact, coming here. Every convenient alibi, every fabricated business trip to New York, a city I now realize you likely never even set foot in, was nothing more than a thinly veiled excuse to be here with them. Every solitary penny, every last cent that could have been meticulously saved for our children's future education, that could have lovingly transformed our humble house into a true home, that could have provided them with even a fraction of the experiences and possessions we so painfully lacked, you squandered, lavishly, here." My gaze swept around the opulent living room, taking in its plush furnishings, its evident comfort, the clear signs of a life far removed from our own. This place, I observed with a fresh wave of bitterness, was immeasurably more comfortable, more spacious, more cared for than the cramped, modest two-story house where I diligently, tirelessly, raised your children. "Look at this place, Arnold," I demanded, my voice ringing with incredulity. "Just look at the sheer, undeniable difference between these two realities. While I, your devoted wife, painstakingly took in mountains of laundry from strangers, scrubbing away to merely supplement our meager income and keep our family afloat, you, her devoted partner, were busy establishing this entire, flourishing shop for her." A profound, dawning realization flickered in Celia's eyes, an almost painful flash of insight. "You said you took in laundry," she murmured, the question laced with confusion. "Arnold told me, he told me you were a teacher, a respected professional with a more than comfortable salary. He assured me you were financially secure, that you had no need of any extra help." A harsh, guttural sound, more a choke than a laugh, tore from my throat, raw and utterly devoid of humor. "Teacher?" I scoffed, shaking my head slowly, a bitter smile twisting my lips. "My dear Celia, I barely managed to complete elementary school, let alone pursue higher education. I scraped by as a sewing assistant in a noisy, sweatshop-like clothing factory, and yes, I supplement that paltry income by meticulously washing and ironing other people's dirty clothes in my supposedly spare time. We reside in a tiny, perpetually cramped two-story house, nestled deep in the unremarkable suburbs of Chicago. Our children, bless their innocent hearts, have never once owned an expensive toy, never known the sheer joy of a family vacation, never experienced a life beyond the constant struggle for basic necessities." My gaze, now blazing with a newfound, chilling clarity, swung back to Arnold. "And that, isn't it?" I continued, my voice low but cutting through the tension, "is precisely why you consistently, almost aggressively, resisted every single time I dared to suggest we start a dedicated savings fund for our children's future education. That's why you invariably, effortlessly, changed the subject with a dismissive wave whenever I brought up the dire need to renovate our crumbling house, to fix the leaky roof or the peeling paint. The truth, in hindsight, is excruciatingly simple, isn't it? The money, our money, already had a firm, predetermined destination, a destination that was never, ever meant for us. Deborah, who had maintained a stunned, almost statuesque silence throughout much of this brutal exchange, suddenly, unexpectedly, found her voice. It emerged as a fragile, splintered sound, irrevocably broken by stifled sobs. "I have siblings," she choked out, her young eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and profound sorrow. "I have siblings. And I never, ever knew." That single question, so tragically innocent in its phrasing, yet simultaneously overflowing with such raw, unadulterated pain, pierced through the protective shell I had unconsciously built around my heart, shattering something deep within my own weary soul. Instinctively, I moved towards her, slowly, cautiously, as one might approach a small, frightened animal, careful not to startle her further. "Yes, Deborah," I confirmed, my voice softening, attempting to convey warmth and solace amidst the chaos. "You have 3 siblings. Your eldest brother, Charles Edward, at 12, shares so many of your features. He even has those exact same, deep, thoughtful eyes. Mary Elizabeth, 10, is quiet and observant, much like you appear to be. And then there's Joseph Andrew, 7, a boisterous handful of energy, but beneath all that mischief, he possesses a heart as vast as the sky." I paused, a lump forming in my throat. "They don't know about you, not yet, just as you, tragically, didn't know about them." Fresh, uncontrollable tears, hot and copious, began to stream freely down the young girl's face, leaving shimmering tracks on her pale skin. Her voice, barely a whisper, carried a question that echoed the very torment in my own mind. "And now, what happens now?" It was the very same terrifying, inescapable question that had relentlessly echoed within the confines of my mind since the devastating moment I had first stumbled upon that incriminating card. What would possibly happen now? How, I silently screamed, how could I ever hope to reconstruct or continue my life, knowing with such absolute certainty that every single foundation, every cherished belief, every shared memory I held dear, was nothing more than a meticulously constructed, cruelly maintained lie? Arnold, perhaps finally sensing the precarious, rapidly eroding ground beneath his feet, and realizing he was losing what little semblance of control he might have once had over this volatile situation, took a hesitant step towards me. "Teresa," he pleaded, his voice a strained whisper, "let's just talk. Let's try to resolve this, calmly, rationally. We don't need to make any hasty, regrettable decisions right now." I recoiled instantly, stepping back as if his mere proximity carried a contagion. My voice, though low, was laced with an unyielding steel. "Don't you dare touch me," I warned, my eyes flashing dangerously. "And more importantly, I refuse to hear another single, solitary lie spill from your treacherous lips." Celia, who had lapsed back into a stunned silence, abruptly pushed herself up from her chair, her movements jerky and determined. "You slept at my house last night, didn't you, Arnold?" she accused, her voice trembling with dawning horror. "You told me you'd be staying here until Sunday, that you'd only return to Chicago on Monday. You even promised you'd take Deborah to the movies tomorrow, a father-daughter outing." She then turned her gaze to me, her eyes widening with a sudden, devastating understanding, a mirror of my own long-held suspicions. "And when he was with you," she ventured, her voice now softer, filled with a nascent empathy, "he claimed he was traveling to New York for business, didn't he? And, conversely, when he was here with me, he simply told you he was working late, or on an extended project?" I simply nodded, a slow, somber confirmation. In that shared, grotesque moment of revelation, I felt a strange, profound connection blossoming between us, a kinship with this woman who, mere minutes ago, had existed only as a fabricated name, a shadowy figure, his supposedly sick sister. "He told you I was his sister?" Celia asked, the incredulity in her voice so stark it bordered on a shriek. "Yes," I confirmed, "his perpetually ailing sister, who apparently required constant, urgent financial assistance. That was his elaborate, self-serving fabrication to justify the significant sums of money he supposedly sent every single month." Celia's head dropped back, a harsh, humorless laugh bubbling up from her throat, raw and broken. And he told me, she interjected, shaking her head in a slow, disbelieving motion, that he had a troubled nephew, the son of a distant brother who lived upstate, and that he was tirelessly helping to fund his expensive medical treatments. Our eyes met across the room, locking in a silent, profound understanding. There we stood, two utterly unsuspecting women, each meticulously deceived by the same monstrously manipulative man, our entire lives meticulously constructed upon a towering, intricate edifice of his insidious lies. In that devastating instant, an unexpected, fierce bond ignited between Celia and me. I felt an undeniable closeness to her, a solidarity born of shared betrayal, that far surpassed any intimacy I had ever known with the man whose bed I had shared, whose secrets I had believed, for 13 long, agonizing years. Arnold, sensing perhaps a moment of silence, began to speak again, his voice now a desperate, frantic scramble to explain, to rationalize, to somehow, impossibly, justify the utterly unjustifiable. But his desperate pronouncements, filled with pleas of love and assurances of not wanting to hurt anyone, of things getting out of his control, were nothing more than hollow echoes in the room, utterly devoid of truth, utterly bereft of any genuine meaning. As his pathetic, self-serving words washed over me, a cold, unshakable resolution began to solidify deep within my core. The path ahead was terrifyingly unclear. I had no earthly idea how my life would possibly unfold from this moment forward, how I would find the strength, the means, the sheer willpower to raise 4 children entirely on my own, or how I would endure the inevitable, scorching judgment of society as a. In the tumultuous landscape of the 1970s, I found myself facing the daunting prospect of becoming a woman utterly alone, a single mother navigating a world not yet accustomed to such independence. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, one truth shone with crystalline clarity: I simply could not, would not, remain bound to a man who had built our entire life together upon a foundation of deceit. Arnold, I stated, my voice cutting through his meandering stream of self-serving excuses like a surgeon's scalpel. His pleas and rationalizations dissolved into the charged air. I don't want to hear another word. Not one more syllable. My resolve was absolute. I'm catching the bus back to Chicago now. And when you eventually return home, I expect you to gather your belongings and leave. I don't want your presence anywhere near me or our children. His response was immediate, a desperate attempt to cling to the fragments of a life he had so carelessly shattered. Teresa, please, let's just talk. We can fix this. But the words were hollow, ringing with the echoes of years of lies. There is nothing left to talk about, I retorted, each word a hammer blow against the edifice of our ruined marriage. You destroyed our family, Arnold. You lied to me. You lied to our innocent children. And you lied to them. My gaze flicked, sharp and condemning, towards Celia and Deborah, standing like silent witnesses to his profound betrayal. There is no going back from this. I turned, the finality of my decision a heavy cloak around me, but before stepping out, I cast one last, aching look at Celia and Deborah. The raw vulnerability in their eyes was a mirror of my own. I'm so incredibly sorry you've been dragged into this, I whispered, the words barely audible. Neither of you deserved any of this pain. With that, I walked out of the shop and onto the sun-drenched Indianapolis street. It was a bizarre paradox. Despite the excruciating ache that tore at my chest, a strange, almost ethereal lightness settled over me. The truth, as brutally painful as it was, carried with it an undeniable, intoxicating sense of liberation. On the bus journey back to Chicago, as silent tears traced warm paths down my face, mirroring the unbidden cascade of emotions within, my mind, surprisingly, began to click into a planning mode. How would I even begin to explain this seismic shift to my children, their innocent hearts so ill-equipped for such a burden? How would I possibly survive financially, suddenly thrust into the role of sole provider for a growing family in an era unforgiving to single mothers? How could I possibly piece together the shattered remnants of my life, reconstruct something meaningful from the broken fragments Arnold had so thoughtlessly scattered in his wake? The future was a vast, terrifying unknown, a landscape shrouded in an impenetrable fog. Yet, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, I knew that day in Indianapolis had marked not just an ending, but a profound genesis. It was the definitive close of one life, a life entangled in deception, marred by betrayal, and the stark, exhilarating beginning of another. A life cleansed of lies, unburdened by secrets. A life that, though fraught with uncertainty and riddled with challenges, would be unequivocally, authentically mine. Returning home that day was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most agonizing experiences of my entire existence. As the bus devoured the miles between Indianapolis and Chicago, a blur of familiar yet unseen landscapes flickered past the window. My mind, however, remained trapped in a furious tempest of thoughts and emotions, a maelstrom of fear, anger, and dawning responsibility. The same questions, now amplified by the impending reality, hammered relentlessly. How would I tell the children? What carefully chosen words could possibly soften the blow? What would I say to our neighbors, whose prying eyes and wagging tongues would surely notice Arnold's absence? And, most critically, how would we survive financially, day by day, month by month, with no clear path forward? By the time I finally reached home, the last vestiges of daylight had faded, surrendering to the hush of night. I collected my children from Louis's house, and her keen eyes, the eyes of a true friend, immediately registered the profound shift in my demeanor. My swollen eyelids, heavy with unshed tears, and the desolate, almost vacant expression etched upon my face, must have been a glaring giveaway. "Did something happen, Teresa?" she inquired softly, her voice barely a whisper, as our children, oblivious to the storm brewing around them, played boisterously in the living room. "We'll talk later," was all I could manage, a choked utterance that barely escaped my lips. I guided the children home, desperately trying to project an air of normalcy, a fragile facade I knew was teetering on the brink of collapse. But Charles Edward, ever the observant one, with a sensitivity far beyond his years, quickly sensed my distress. "Mom, are you sick?" he asked, his young eyes, so strikingly reminiscent of Deborah's in their deep brown hue, now filled with genuine concern that pierced my heart. "No, son, just a little tired from the trip," I lied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. That night, I tucked the children into bed early, attempting to weave a bedtime story, but my mind was so utterly fractured that I could barely recall the narrative's thread. The moment I finally closed their bedroom door, a dam within me burst. I collapsed onto the living room sofa, surrendering to a wave of guttural sobs unlike any I had ever experienced. I cried for myself, for the crushing weight of betrayal. I cried for my innocent children, whose lives had been irrevocably altered, and I even cried for Celia and Deborah, those other unsuspecting victims caught in Arnold's intricately spun, deceitful web. Sunday arrived, the day Arnold was scheduled to return from his supposed business trip to New York. I spent the entire day in a state of agitated anticipation, mentally rehearsing the confrontation, meticulously crafting the words I would use to demand his immediate departure from our home. But Sunday passed. Then Monday. He never appeared. By Tuesday, the children's persistent questions about their father, now tinged with a growing insistence, had begun to fray my last nerves. That afternoon, the shrill ring of the telephone shattered the quiet tension of the house. It was a call from the trucking company. The news was delivered in a clipped, dispassionate tone. Arnold had quit. He hadn't offered a single explanation, had simply left a terse letter resigning from his position, and vanished. He had not shown up for work, nor had he been seen since. In that devastating moment, the cold, hard truth solidified: he would not be returning. He lacked the courage, the decency, to face the wreckage he had wrought. He would abandon me and our children, just as, I now understood with sickening clarity, he had likely abandoned Celia and Deborah, leaving them to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. The days that followed were a descent into unadulterated desperation. The meager savings we possessed felt like grains of sand slipping through my fingers, barely enough to cover a single month of our expenses. My paltry salary as a sewing assistant, barely a pittance, would be woefully insufficient to sustain our home and provide for 4 children, 3 already here, and 1 precious life still growing within me. It was in this abyss of uncertainty that sewing, a skill gracefully passed down from my mother since my earliest childhood, transformed from a simple craft into my absolute lifeline, my very salvation. I began tentatively, accepting small repair and alteration jobs from the women in our neighborhood, mending torn seams and adjusting ill-fitting garments. I brazenly posted handwritten ads in the bustling local markets, a desperate whisper of hope in the cacophony. I even offered my services at the school gate, approaching other mothers as I picked up my children, swallowing my pride with each nervous offer. At first, the income was so negligible, a mere trickle, that it barely made a discernible difference to our already strained budget. Yet, with a quiet, persistent tenacity, my clientele slowly began to grow, like a nascent plant pushing through parched earth. People started seeking me out, not just for simple repairs, but for more intricate commissions, new dresses, bespoke curtains, elegant tablecloths. My work, meticulous and infused with an inherent artistry, was impeccable, and my prices, reflecting my earnest desire to help, were fair. Before long, the humble living room of our small house, once a space of shared family life, was miraculously transformed into an improvised atelier, a vibrant tapestry of fabric scraps, spools of colorful threads, and the rhythmic hum of an old, dependable sewing machine I had painstakingly acquired secondhand. Meanwhile, as my belly visibly expanded with the promise of new life, so too did the buzzing curiosity of the neighborhood. In the conservative 1970s, the sight of a woman alone, visibly pregnant, and single-handedly raising 3 young children, became an unavoidable magnet for whispers, judgmental glances, and outright disapproval. To shield my children, and myself, from the relentless scrutiny and the inevitable shame of public exposure, I concocted a plausible narrative. Arnold, I explained with a forced cheerfulness, had found a much better job opportunity in another state, and we would soon be joining him there. It was a fabricated truth, a necessary fiction, far easier to maintain than explaining the devastating reality, than exposing my children to the humiliating truth of having a father who had led a meticulously constructed double life. I recall with crystalline clarity the day I received an unexpected telephone call, its ring jarring me from my concentration at the sewing machine. "Teresa, this is Celia from Indianapolis." My heart, a panicked hummingbird, immediately began to race within my chest. What did she want? Did she have news of Arnold? Had he, by some twisted turn of fate, returned there? "Has Arnold returned to Indianapolis?" she asked, her voice tight with a brittle tension that mirrored my own. "No," I replied, the word flat, devoid of emotion. "He hasn't come back. He quit the trucking company and simply disappeared." A profound silence stretched across the telephone line, heavy with unspoken understanding. Then, a slow, ragged sigh escaped her lips. "Here, too," she confirmed, the words carrying the weight of shared despair. "Disappeared without a trace. He only left a letter, a pathetic note asking for forgiveness, claiming he didn't deserve either of us." The complexity of my emotions in that moment defies easy description. Anger, of course, raged within me, a righteous fury at his cowardly abandonment of his children. But entwined with that anger was a strange, almost unsettling relief at the prospect of never having to face him again, never having to endure another one of his meticulously constructed lies. "How are you doing, Teresa?" Celia asked, her voice imbued with a genuine, startling concern that caught me off guard. "Surviving," I replied, the honesty of the word raw. "Just surviving. And you and Deborah? Are you surviving, too?" Another pause, then a quiet admission. "The shop," she said, her voice a little stronger, "it's supporting us, at least." Another silence descended, a testament to the unsaid burdens they both carried. Then, her voice slightly strained, a tremor betraying the emotional weight of her words, Celia continued, "Teresa, please, if you ever find out where he is, let me know. Not for my sake, mind you, what good would that do me now? But for Deborah. She deserves answers, don't you think? She needs to understand why her father simply vanished into thin air." "Of course," I promised, the words escaping my lips almost on their own, a silent acknowledgement of the shared burden. "And if you learn anything," I added, a flicker of my own pain surfacing, "let me know, too. My children, innocent as they are, also deserve to know the truth, to understand why their father abandoned them so cruelly." We eventually hung up, not with a sense of closure, but with a strange, almost unsettling camaraderie. It was an alliance born of shared betrayal, a silent pact between two women scarred by the same man, two mothers fiercely trying to shield their children from the gnawing, insidious pain of rejection. In August of 1978, amidst the swirling chaos of my personal life, my youngest daughter, Beatrice, arrived. The delivery itself was a grueling ordeal, made even more complicated and exhausting by the relentless stress and a suffocating blanket of worries that had clung to me during those harrowing final months of pregnancy. Yet, the moment the nurses placed that tiny, fragile bundle into my arms, a profound, almost primal feeling of fierce determination ignited within me. It was like a dormant volcano suddenly roaring to life. I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that I would raise those 4 children alone, with an unwavering dignity, a quiet defiance against a world that had tried to break me. I swore I would move heaven and earth to ensure they would never, ever lack the essentials, not just food and shelter, but love, stability, and a deep-seated belief in their own worth. The months that followed blurred into an endless cycle of relentless work and precious little rest. My sewing machine hummed a constant lullaby during the day as Beatrice slept beside me, its rhythmic whirring my only companion. And at night, long after the older children had finally succumbed to sleep, I would continue, hunched over my work, the solitary glow of a lamp illuminating tired fingers. My older children, surprisingly mature for their years, helped in whatever ways their young hearts and hands could manage. Charles Edward, still just a boy, would proudly make small deliveries of finished clothes to customers, his face serious with responsibility. Mary Elizabeth, ever the gentle soul, took on the tender task of caring for the baby while I worked, her young eyes full of love. And Joseph Andrew, with his quiet steadfastness, assisted with the endless stream of household chores, never complaining. In 1979, with a mixture of fear and liberation, I finally filed for divorce. I still had no idea where Arnold had vanished to, but his very abandonment, ironic as it was, made the legal process mercifully simpler. It was a painfully raw experience to have to recount the entire saga to a lawyer, to articulate the intimate betrayals and heartbreaks, only to then see my life story reduced to cold, sterile facts recorded in official documents. Yet, I desperately needed that divorce, craved that piece of paper like a parched woman yearns for water. I needed it to declare my freedom, to sever the invisible chains that still bound me, to finally, unequivocally, rebuild my shattered life from the ground up. The neighborhood, as neighborhoods often do, predictably buzzed with gossip. In those days, being a divorced woman was almost a scarlet letter, a social stigma that clung to you like a shadow. There were the hushed whispers, the quick, averted glances, and the pitying looks that felt like needles when I passed. Some friends, fearing perhaps that divorce was a contagious ailment, subtly distanced themselves, their once warm greetings now cool and hesitant. But others, like my steadfast friend Louise, remained firmly by my side, an unyielding anchor in the storm, offering unwavering support and the precious gift of true friendship precisely when I needed it most. It was around this tumultuous time that a lifeline, a proposal that would irrevocably alter the course of my life, unexpectedly materialized. Mrs. Wilson, a gracious and loyal customer for whom I had painstakingly completed numerous sewing jobs over the years, owned a quaint little fabric store nestled in the vibrant heart of the neighborhood. One afternoon, she appeared at my doorstep, a purposeful glint in her eyes, and laid out her proposition. "Teresa," she began, her voice brimming with a quiet confidence, "I'm thinking of expanding my store. I envision a dedicated dressmaking space, a place where creativity can truly flourish. But I need someone who not only understands the nuances of the business, but who also possesses exquisite taste and, crucially, skillful hands. I've thought of you, my dear." The offer was undeniably tempting, a beacon of hope in my struggling existence, a fixed salary, significantly better than the meager wages I earned as an assistant at the monotonous factory, plus a commission on every piece sold. I accepted immediately, my heart soaring, seeing it not just as a job, but as a golden opportunity, a chance to not merely survive, but to profoundly improve my children's lives. I poured every ounce of my energy into my work at Mrs. Wilson's store during the day, meticulously crafting garments, and then, as if by second nature, continued with my extra sewing jobs well into the night. Gradually, with each stitch and every carefully chosen fabric, I began to create my own signature pieces, simple yet elegantly refined designs that consistently delighted my customers. Mrs. Wilson, with her discerning eye, quickly noticed my burgeoning talent and, with a generous spirit, began to grant me more and more creative freedom, allowing my artistic vision to truly blossom. In 1980, a year after I had eagerly embraced my new role at the store, the past unexpectedly resurfaced with another jarring, unwelcome call from Celia. "Teresa, I need your help," she choked out, her voice raw with desperation, each word heavy with unshed tears. She confessed that her shop was floundering, drowning under a suffocating weight of mounting debts, and she felt utterly lost, unsure of how to navigate the impending ruin. Arnold, true to his cowardly nature, had vanished without a trace, offering no further news, leaving her and Deborah perilously close to losing their home, their last shred of stability. I still struggle to articulate the profound, complex motivations that stirred within me at that moment. Was it a powerful surge of female solidarity, a visceral understanding that we, as women, must lift each other up? Perhaps it was the indelible memory of Deborah's small, frightened face that day in Indianapolis, her innocence overshadowed by adult choices, that haunted me. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the chilling realization that, but for a twist of fate, I could have been the one in her shoes, facing the same abyss. Without allowing myself the luxury of much reflection, almost as if an unseen force was guiding my tongue, I heard myself utter the words that would once again reshape our lives: "Come to Chicago. I know someone who needs a fabric salesperson." A mere 2 weeks later, Celia and Deborah arrived in Chicago, their meager belongings crammed into a few worn suitcases, their hearts undoubtedly heavy with many broken dreams. I had already arranged for them to rent a cozy room in Louise's house. Louise, upon hearing the entire, heartbreaking story, her own fierce loyalty unwavering, had readily agreed to help. I immediately introduced Celia to Mrs. Wilson, who, impressed by Celia's encyclopedic knowledge of fabrics and her charming, intuitive way with customers, hired her on the spot, a much-needed lifeline extended. Deborah, then a quiet 15-year-old, enrolled in the same school as my children, though they found themselves in different grades due to their age differences. It was, understandably, incredibly strange at first, this unlikely, almost improbable, arrangement. My own children, to whom I had finally, painfully, been forced to reveal the full, unvarnished truth about their father's abandonment, were a maelstrom of confusion and hurt. This was especially true for Charles Edward, who, at 13, possessed a burgeoning understanding that allowed him to perfectly grasp the devastating implications of his father's betrayal. "Why are you helping them, Mom?" he asked me one day, his young voice thick with the raw edge of hurt, his brow furrowed in genuine bewilderment. "He abandoned us because of them." "No, son," I replied softly, reaching out to gently hold his hands in mine, trying to convey a wisdom beyond his years. "Your father abandoned us because of himself, because of his own selfish, wrong choices. Celia and Deborah are victims, just like us. And in this world, my dear boy, women need to help each other, to stand together." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a strange and beautiful friendship began to unfurl between our two families, intertwining our previously separate paths. Celia, who initially seemed to carry a visible discomfort with my generosity, perhaps feeling a burden of indebtedness, gradually began to reciprocate in countless small, meaningful ways. She would often surprise the children with homemade treats, a silent token of her gratitude. She patiently helped Mary Elizabeth with her math lessons, a subject in which Celia excelled with an almost effortless grace. And, ever considerate, she offered to look after Beatrice whenever my late-night work hours stretched beyond what I could manage alone. Deborah, after an initial, understandable period of adolescent rejection and shyness, began to tentatively forge connections with my children, finding a particularly strong bond with Charles Edward. The two discovered that beyond their strikingly similar appearances, the undeniable genetic echoes of their shared father, they also harbored a deep, abiding love for books and stories, a common intellectual ground that drew them together. It was at once both painful and profoundly comforting to witness them together, observing the slow, delicate unfolding of this late-found, unlikely sibling bond, a testament to resilience and the enduring power of connection. In 1981, another significant turning point arrived when Mrs. Wilson, having decided it was time to embrace a well-deserved retirement, offered her beloved store for sale. The asking price, a daunting sum, was far beyond my meager means. But Mrs. Wilson, who by then had become not just a mentor but almost a second mother to me, proposed a remarkably generous deal. I could acquire the business and pay her in manageable monthly installments while simultaneously managing the daily operations. It was then, amidst this unexpected opportunity, that a bold, almost audacious idea sparked in my mind. You possess an innate understanding of sales and fabrics, a real talent for connecting with customers. And I continued, gesturing to my sewing machine, I understand dressmaking, the art of creation and production. Together, Celia, we can transform this quaint little store into something truly magnificent, something bigger than either of us could achieve alone. She looked at me, first with a bewildered surprise, then with a dawning emotion that softened her features. You would truly trust me like that, Teresa? She asked, a lingering shadow of past betrayals in her voice. It wasn't you who lied to me, Celia, I replied, my voice firm, clear, and imbued with conviction. It was him who lied to both of us. We are in this together. And thus, with that powerful declaration of trust and shared purpose, New Beginning Clothing was born, a name that, in its simple eloquence, perfectly encapsulated our intertwined stories of resilience, betrayal, and redemption. Celia, with her natural acumen, seamlessly took charge of sales and administration, the backbone of the business. I, in turn, devoted myself to the creative heart of the operation, design, creation, and production. At first, it was just the two of us, a small but fiercely determined team, ready to stitch a brighter future, one garment at a time. Working tirelessly from dawn till dusk, our hands a blur of motion, the initial exhaustion of building something from nothing was immense. But soon, the persistent hum of our sewing machines was joined by the clatter of growing success. Orders piled up, the demand outstripped our 2 pairs of hands, and a profound sense of validation washed over us when we were finally able to hire our first assistants. It was a tangible sign that our desperate gamble was beginning to pay off. As the years gracefully spun by, like threads woven into a rich tapestry, our little store didn't just survive, it flourished. New Beginning Clothing wasn't merely a name, it was a mantra, a daily affirmation. We found ourselves moving into a space 3 times larger, a bustling hub on the neighborhood's main avenue. The larger premises allowed us to expand our team, welcoming more talented seamstresses who brought their own artistry to our creations. We broadened our product line, venturing beyond simple repairs and custom dresses to offer a wider array of garments, each piece infused with our commitment to quality and style. And then came the moment of profound, almost poetic irony. We began supplying uniforms to local companies. Among them, by some strange twist of fate, was the very trucking company where Arnold, the man who had shattered our lives, had once been employed. Can you imagine the mixture of vindication and quiet triumph? It was as if the universe itself was acknowledging our resilience, reminding us that from the ashes of betrayal, something truly enduring could rise. Our children, the very heartbeats of our motivation, were growing up alongside the business. Charles Edward, my eldest, always had an insatiable hunger for knowledge, a studious intensity that shone in his eyes. He pored over textbooks late into the night, his mind a steel trap for complex equations. His dedication culminated in a coveted scholarship to college, a testament to his exceptional intellect, and he eventually graduated with a degree in engineering, ready to build and innovate. Mary Elizabeth, my creative spirit, naturally gravitated towards the world of fashion, mirroring my own early passion. From a young age, she would sketch designs on scraps of paper, her imagination boundless. She evolved into a truly talented designer, infusing our business with fresh perspectives and contemporary flair. Her innovative ideas, from avant-garde silhouettes to clever fabric pairings, revitalized our offerings, keeping New Beginning Clothing at the cutting edge of local style. Joseph Andrew, with his magnetic personality and innate ability to connect with anyone, effortlessly slipped into the sales area. He possessed a natural charisma that drew people in, making every customer feel like an old friend. When Celia, with her graceful acknowledgement of the passage of time, began to ease her workload, Joseph seamlessly took the reins, transforming the sales floor into a vibrant, engaging space where clients felt understood and valued. And then there was Beatrice, my youngest, born amidst that tumultuous storm of 1978. She grew into a young woman of formidable strength and unyielding determination. From her earliest days, she carried a keen sense of justice, an innate fire to advocate for the voiceless. It was no surprise when she chose to study law, driven by a powerful desire to champion causes for women, echoing the very battles her mother had fought to carve out a dignified existence. Celia's daughter, Deborah, also played an indispensable role. Armed with a degree in business administration, she injected a new stratum of professionalism into our expanding enterprise. It was her sharp mind that streamlined our operations, her strategic vision that led us to explore new product lines, and her meticulous guidance that navigated us through the labyrinthine complexities of tax codes and labor laws. She brought a level of analytical rigor that transformed our earnest venture into a robust, modern business. Indeed, life was a relentless uphill climb, never truly easy, but it was anchored in honesty and imbued with an undeniable dignity. We never once heard from Arnold again after his sudden disappearance. Then, years later, like a ghost passing through a fleeting rumor, news reached us that he had died in a highway accident somewhere far off in the south. How does one truly reconcile such conflicting feelings? A strange, potent brew of emotions swirled within me, a profound sadness for the father of my children, a deep-seated anger at the man who had so callously abandoned us, and finally, a peculiar, liberating sense of peace at having closure. The chapter, abruptly, was truly finished. When I cast my mind back to that frightened, bewildered young woman who, in 1978, stumbled upon the devastating truth of her husband's betrayal, I barely recognize her. The journey from that broken moment to the woman I stand as today has been nothing short of a metamorphosis. The path was undeniably hard, strewn with unforeseen obstacles and gut-wrenching challenges. Yet, each hurdle cleared, each adversity faced, served only to forge greater strength within me. Each difficulty, no matter how daunting, became an invaluable lesson, teaching me resilience, resourcefulness, and the unshakable power of self-belief. That innocuous birthday card, tucked away in Arnold's coat pocket, could have utterly destroyed my life, plunging me into an abyss of despair. Instead, by some miracle of fate, it became the unexpected genesis of a profound journey of self-discovery and triumphant overcoming. The raw, searing pain of betrayal, like a crucible of fire, transformed within me, melting away weakness and forging an indomitable strength. This newfound power enabled me to rebuild not only my own fractured life but also to become the steadfast foundation for the lives of everyone around me. And perhaps the most astonishing revelation of all? The woman I initially feared the most, the very embodiment of Arnold's betrayal, became my staunchest ally, my indispensable business partner, and ultimately, my dearest friend. Celia and I, two women united by the shared wound of deception at the hands of the same man, discovered in each other an unbreakable bond, a wellspring of mutual strength that propelled us forward. We proved, unequivocally, that sometimes the most profound blessings arrive in the most unexpected disguises, often as the deepest, most harrowing tragedies. The 1980s, an era synonymous with transformative shifts in America, also brought monumental changes to my own life. While the nation was basking in the economic optimism of the Reagan era, dreaming of widespread prosperity, I was quietly, deliberately, building my own fiercely independent path of liberation. Our store, aptly named New Beginning Clothing, saw its reputation and revenue grow exponentially each year, solidifying its place as a trusted reference point, a beacon of quality and community pride in the neighborhood. What had hesitantly begun as a desperate venture between two uncertain women blossomed, against all odds, into a solid, thriving company. By the end of the decade, we proudly employed more than 15 skilled seamstresses and 3 dedicated salespeople, a testament to sheer grit and unwavering vision. Of course, the journey was far from smooth. In those early years, the prevailing patriarchal attitudes cast a long shadow. Many suppliers, accustomed to dealing with male proprietors, simply didn't take 2 divorced women trying to run a serious business seriously. I vividly recall one particular fabric representative, a man whose condescending smirk was almost palpable, who arrived at our store and insisted, with a dismissive wave of his hand, on speaking only to the owner. Celia, always the more diplomatic and composed of us, would simply flash her serene smile and, with a knowing glance at me, gently correct him, "Sir, you are speaking to the owner. In fact, you're speaking to both of them." It was a constant battle, a quiet but firm assertion of our rightful place in a male-dominated commercial world. By 1983, our ambitions had outgrown our existing space. We boldly expanded, securing a new location 3 times larger than our previous one, strategically situated on the main avenue of the neighborhood. This ambitious move necessitated taking out a significant bank loan, a truly immense challenge for women in that era. The institutional bias was stark. Securing capital was notoriously difficult for female entrepreneurs, often met with skepticism and archaic requirements. The bank manager, a stern-faced man whose approval felt like a personal judgment, only sanctioned the loan after my then 18-year-old son, Charles Edward, was compelled to sign as guarantor. Imagine the sting of that moment. All the tangible assets, the years of demonstrated success, were unequivocally ours, yet a young man's signature was deemed more creditworthy than the entirety of our hard-earned history. That, tragically, was the world we inhabited, where a male endorsement, however young, carried more weight than the proven track record of a thriving company run by women. But we were not deterred. These systemic barriers, though frustrating, only fueled our resolve. The new store was a triumph, boasting a magnificent display window where we artfully showcased our finest creations, drawing admiring glances from passers-by. In the expansive back area, we established a larger, state-of-the-art atelier, equipping it with industrial machines that dramatically enhanced our production capacity, allowing us to confidently accept larger, more complex orders. Soon, our reputation for quality and efficiency spread, and we found ourselves supplying uniforms not just to schools and businesses, but even to some of the most reputable hospitals in the region. Mary Elizabeth, my daughter, then just 16, truly blossomed into a natural designer during this period. Her innate talent was undeniable. She began by sketching simple yet elegant models specifically for our younger clientele, and almost immediately, her fresh, contemporary creations became some of the most sought-after items in the store. Witnessing her creative genius flourish, watching her dreams take tangible form, was one of the purest, most profound joys of those demanding years. It was as if every sacrifice, every sleepless night spent hunched over patterns, every ounce of relentless hard work, had been worth it, simply to see my children confidently forging their own remarkable paths. Charles Edward, my brilliant son, entered engineering college in 1984, securing a full scholarship that underscored his exceptional academic prowess. I remember the day of his graduation in 1989 as vividly as if it were yesterday. Sitting there in the packed audience, nestled between Celia and my other children, I couldn't stem the tide of tears that welled in my eyes as I watched him stride across the stage, so elegant and dignified in a borrowed suit from a cousin, to receive his diploma. In that poignant moment, my thoughts, unbidden, drifted to Arnold, and a profound sadness enveloped me, realizing the irreplaceable privilege he had forfeited, the joy of witnessing his son grow into such an admirable, accomplished man. Joseph Andrew, always the most ebullient and extroverted of my children, discovered his true calling in sales. Even during his adolescence, he spent his Saturdays helping out at the store, effortlessly charming customers with his natural charisma and disarming smile. By the time he turned 18 in 1989, he had already become our indispensable main salesperson, possessing a rare talent not only for engaging clients but also for deftly negotiating with suppliers and skillfully winning new accounts, expanding our reach even further. And Beatrice, my youngest, born amidst that harrowing storm of 1978, indeed grew up to be a girl of immense strength and unwavering determination. From a remarkably early age, she displayed a razor-sharp intelligence and an innate sense of justice that often left me marveling. I recall a specific incident, when a well-meaning but misguided teacher suggested she might follow a career in cutting and sewing, like her mother, Beatrice, then a mere 10 years old, looked the teacher straight in the eye and declared with steely resolve that she intended to become a lawyer. "I want to defend women," she asserted, "women like my mother, who had to fight against everything and everyone just to survive." Her words were a testament to her profound understanding of our journey, a promise to continue the fight for fairness and equality. Deborah, Celia's brilliant daughter, graduated with a degree in business administration in 1986, bringing a much-needed fresh perspective and analytical rigor to our burgeoning business. Leveraging her extensive knowledge, we were able to implement a far more efficient financial control system, making our operations leaner and more strategic. She spearheaded our expansion into exciting new product lines and even oversaw the successful opening of a small branch store in a neighboring area. Deborah and Charles Edward, in a powerful synergy, frequently collaborated on company growth strategies, seamlessly integrating the analytical precision of engineering with the strategic foresight of administration to optimize every facet of our processes, propelling New Beginning Clothing into a future even brighter than its hard-won past. It was truly fascinating, almost miraculous, to witness the evolution of the half-siblings' relationship. Having only met each other during the tumultuous years of adolescence, they didn't just coexist, they forged a bond so profoundly close and collaborative it transcended the initial awkwardness and potential for resentment. Deborah and Charles Edward, for instance, shared an uncanny resemblance not just in their physical features, that same analytical glint in their eyes, that characteristic slight furrow of the brow when deep in thought, but also in their shared quiet determination. It was a silent, unwavering resolve that belied their often calm demeanor, a trait that would prove invaluable in the turbulent years ahead. Then there was Mary Elizabeth and Deborah, who, despite their starkly different paths, possessed a remarkably refined aesthetic sense. For Deborah, this manifested in the meticulous, almost artistic, organization of her spreadsheets and reports, every line perfectly aligned, every figure precisely placed. For Mary Elizabeth, it was a vibrant, expressive passion for fashion, a flair for transforming fabric and accessories into statements of beauty and individuality. Two distinct expressions, yet both stemming from a deep appreciation for order, harmony, and visual appeal. Of course, to paint a picture of unblemished perfection would be a disservice to our shared reality. Could any family, conventional or otherwise, navigate life's complexities without a few jagged edges? Absolutely not. There were, indeed, difficult moments that tested our patience, heated discussions that echoed through the rooms, and contested decisions that required careful, sometimes painful, deliberation. These weren't mere squabbles, they were the friction points where individual wills and perspectives clashed, sparking growth, just as they do in any deeply connected human unit. But through it all, we truly had become an unconventional family, intricately woven together not by the mere happenstance of bloodlines, but by something far more potent: shared experiences, mutual respect, unwavering support, and a collective belief in our future. Our unity was put to the test almost immediately. The economic recession of the early 80s hit us like a tidal wave. Its repercussions felt not just in the abstract news reports but in the tangible struggle to keep our fledgling business afloat. Each new government economic plan seemed to land with the force of a wrecking ball, turning our meticulously crafted financial planning upside down, forcing us to constantly pivot and adapt. Then came the galloping inflation, a beast that devoured profit margins and made it almost impossible to accurately price our products. Imagine trying to run a business where the cost of your raw materials could double overnight, and the price you set for your finished goods was outdated before the ink even dried. It was a relentless, exhausting fight for survival. The year 1986, in particular, remains etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of how close we came to losing everything. A fresh economic downturn descended, bringing with it a cruel combination: government-imposed frozen prices on our products, while the cost and availability of raw materials fluctuated wildly, often leading to acute scarcity. We were trapped in an impossible bind, squeezed from both ends, our options seemingly vanishing with each passing day. I can still vividly recall those sleepless nights, the air thick with tension and the aroma of stale coffee, as Celia, Deborah, and I huddled at the kitchen table. Our heads bent together, we pored over ledgers, scribbled calculations on napkins, and brainstormed endlessly, desperate to find even a slee glimmer of light, a single thread to pull us out of the suffocating economic maze our country had stumbled into. It was in those moments of near despair that the unique strengths of our unconventional family truly shone. Charles Edward, with his inherent analytical prowess, was the one who brilliantly suggested we diversify our offerings. Why are we only focusing on selling finished products? He reasoned, his voice calm but firm. Let's pivot to repair and adjustment services. We can price those by hours of work, by the skilled labor involved, not just the fluctuating value of the final product. It was a seemingly simple idea, yet utterly groundbreaking for us, shifting our business model from commodity-based to service-based, offering a tangible solution when product sales were stifled. Simultaneously, Joseph Andrew embarked on a tireless quest, venturing into the rural areas surrounding us. He returned triumphant, having discovered a cotton producers cooperative willing to work with us, accepting payment terms that were flexible enough to allow us to survive in that cripplingly frozen market. His tenacity not only secured our vital raw materials but also forged a new, more resilient supply chain. And then there was Mary Elizabeth, whose creative genius truly blossomed under pressure. With an artist's eye for potential, she saw not waste but opportunity in the discarded fabric scraps that would have otherwise been tossed away. She began meticulously transforming these seemingly useless remnants into a vibrant new line of accessories, creating beautiful, one-of-a-kind pieces. This wasn't just recycling, it was alchemy, transforming potential waste into a beautiful, tangible new source of income that injected much-needed cash flow into the business. Indeed, time and again, adversity had not defeated us, it had forged us. We emerged from that harrowing economic crisis not just intact, but stronger, more diversified in our offerings, and unequivocally more united as both a family and a burgeoning company. We had learned to innovate, to collaborate, and to find opportunity even in the bleakest of circumstances. This hard-won resilience was tested again in 1990 when the country plunged into another economic recession. Just as we had finally begun to breathe easier, just as we had saved for years with the dream of purchasing a larger, more suitable property for the store, a significant portion of that painstakingly accumulated money suddenly became inaccessible due to the banking crisis. The shock was palpable, the frustration immense. Those months were characterized by unrelenting hardship, by a forced reorganization of every aspect of our lives and business, and by an even more intense, often grueling, work schedule. It was during this period of heightened stress and unrelenting pressure that we first noticed the subtle, insidious signs of fatigue beginning to claim Celia. A few years my senior, she was already in her early 50s, and it became painfully clear that the relentless stress of all those preceding years, the countless battles fought, the burdens carried, had finally taken their undeniable toll. It began innocently enough, with small, almost dismissible things, frequent, nagging headaches that wouldn't relent, a persistent lack of appetite that made me worry, and a profound, pervasive fatigue that simply wouldn't dissipate, no matter how much she rested. We attributed it to the recession, to the stress, to her age. But in early 1991, the devastating truth arrived, shattering our fragile sense of normalcy, a diagnosis of advanced-stage breast cancer. The news hit us like a physical blow, leaving us reeling, breathless with shock and grief. In her boundless selflessness, Celia had, in retrospect, ignored the earlier, quieter warnings, too consumed with the all-encompassing demands of nurturing the business, too relentlessly focused on securing Deborah's future. She had poured her entire being into others, neglecting herself in the process. The months that followed were an emotional roller coaster of unimaginable intensity. Days of surgery, weeks of grueling chemotherapy, endless radiation sessions. There were fleeting, good days, when a flicker of her old vibrancy returned, quickly followed by terrible days, when the sheer exhaustion and debilitating side effects reduced her to a shadow of her former self. Deborah, absolutely devastated by the terrifying prospect of losing her beloved mother, somehow found within herself an extraordinary wellspring of strength. She continued to manage the store, a testament to her incredible resolve, while I, in a strange twist of fate, accompanied Celia to her treatments. It was indeed a profound, almost poetic, full-circle moment in our lives. There I was, the woman who had once viewed her as a rival, the other woman, in my husband's life, now sitting beside her. I held her hand, its skin papery and cool, through the excruciating chemotherapy sessions, spoon-fed her on those wretched days when she was too weak to even lift a utensil to her lips, and read to her in a soft, steady voice when her eyes, clouded with fatigue and medication, could no longer focus on the words. Our past dissolved into the present necessity of human connection and profound compassion. I'll never forget one particular afternoon at the hospital. We were waiting for the doctor, the air heavy with unspoken fears, when Celia, her grip surprisingly firm, reached out and held my hand. "You know, Teresa," she whispered, her voice raspy but clear, "when you first showed up at that little shop in Indianapolis, I genuinely thought it was the absolute worst day of my life. My world, as I knew it, collapsed." She paused, a small, wry smile gracing her lips. "But today," she continued, her eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that pierced through the exhaustion. Today, I see it was the best day. That day, that terrifying, earth-shattering day, truly freed me from a life of lies, a life I didn't even realize I was trapped in. And more than that, she squeezed my hand, it brought me you, Teresa. You are the best friend I've ever had. Her words, delivered with such raw honesty and profound gratitude, completely overwhelmed me. My throat closed, constricted by a torrent of emotion, sorrow, love, relief, and an aching sense of shared history. I couldn't articulate a single word in response. All I could do was squeeze her hand back, tightly, a silent yet perfectly understood affirmation of everything I felt but couldn't express. And she felt it, I know she did, a profound understanding passing between us without the need for language. Celia fought with an extraordinary, almost superhuman, bravery for 4 grueling years. There were periods of precious remission, brief respites when she would eagerly return to the store, working part-time, always with a vibrantly colored scarf elegantly wrapped around her head, a stylish defiance against her hair loss. She would greet customers with her old warmth, a testament to her unbreakable spirit. But then came the inevitable relapses, crushing disappointments that would send her back to the hospital for weeks at a time, each return a further draining of her finite strength. Finally, in 1995, on Deborah's 30th birthday, a day meant for celebration, now imbued with profound bittersweetness, Celia peacefully left us. She passed away in her own bed, surrounded by love, holding my hand on one side and her daughter's hands on the other, a final image of unity and enduring affection. The grief that followed was not merely profound, it was a physical weight, an aching void that settled deep within us. It wasn't just Deborah who mourned, it was all of us, the entire unconventional family. Celia, with her fierce spirit, her quiet strength, and her boundless capacity for love, had truly become the vibrant, beating heart of our strange, beautifully recomposed family. Her absence left an emptiness that seemed utterly impossible to fill, a silence where her laughter and wisdom used to reside. The store, despite continuing to function under the remarkably competent administration of Deborah and my children, seemed less vibrant, less alive without her singular presence, her keen eye, her comforting energy. It was during this deeply introspective period of mourning, when the very foundations of our family felt shaken, that I made a decision that surprised virtually everyone. Drawing upon my own long-saved earnings and with the invaluable assistance of Charles Edward, who helped me secure a necessary loan, I purchased a larger house. This wasn't just any house, it was a home conceived with an expansive vision, designed to comfortably accommodate all of us, myself, my 4 children, and, if she chose to accept, Deborah. I vividly recall the complex tapestry of emotions that flickered across her face when I extended the invitation, a mixture of genuine surprise, profound emotion, and a touch of understandable hesitation. "Are you truly sure, Teresa?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Wouldn't it be strange for your children, for them to have me living there?" My response was immediate, unequivocal, born of years of shared history and affection. "Deborah," I said, meeting her gaze, "my children have considered you family for years now, and so have I. Your mother, Celia, became like a sister to me, a confidant, a partner in all things. And you, my dear, you are like a daughter to me. Our family, as you well know, has never been conventional anyway. It's always been about connection, not just blood." Her acceptance was a quiet, powerful moment, and with that, we truly began a new chapter, a testament to enduring love and the boundless capacity of the human heart to heal and expand. The new house, though certainly not luxurious in the traditional sense, exuded a pervasive sense of warmth and spaciousness. It was a haven where everyone finally had their own room, a personal sanctuary within our larger shared life. There was even enough space for a dedicated sewing room, a creative corner where I could continue my passion for designing and creating, even as I gradually transitioned to spending less time at the store. Life, in its beautiful, relentless way, continued to unfold and expand. In 1996, Charles Edward married Anna, a brilliant colleague he'd met at the engineering firm where he worked, adding another cherished member to our ever-growing family. The very next year, a new wonder entered our lives. My first grandchild, Gabriel, was born. Holding that tiny, perfect bundle in my arms for the very first time was an indescribable experience, a moment of such pure, crystalline joy that it felt as though time itself paused. Looking at his flawless little face, so full of innocent promise, I was suddenly flooded with memories, a panoramic view of the entire arduous, exhilarating journey that had brought me to this precise, blessed moment. I thought of the innocent birthday card in Arnold's pocket, the shocking discovery in Indianapolis that shattered my world but ultimately cleared a path for truth. I remembered the years of relentless struggle, the sheer grit required to rebuild my life piece by painstaking piece, brick by brick. I reflected on the unlikely, profound friendship that blossomed with Celia, transforming rivalry into an unbreakable bond. The growth of our store, forged through innovation and resilience. The terrifying crises we had collectively faced and, against all odds, had overcome. Every difficulty, every tear shed in frustration or sorrow, every single night of work that stretched until the point of sheer exhaustion, all of it, every single bit of it, had been unequivocally, gloriously worth it. Worth it to arrive at this moment, cradling this new life, surrounded by a family born not just of blood, but of profound love, shared history, and an unyielding spirit. Worth it to finally feel not just peace, but a deep, abiding sense of belonging and fulfillment. A truly transcendent moment. To witness my family not merely surviving, but actively thriving, growing, prosperous, and astonishingly united in a manner I once believed to be utterly beyond the realm of possibility. Mary Elizabeth, with her innate sense of style and form, graduated with a degree in fashion design in 1998, a year that heralded a seismic shift for our enterprise. She didn't just join the business, she completely seized the creative reins, injecting a fresh, vibrant aesthetic into our offerings. Her extraordinary talent didn't just elevate our creations to a new echelon of sophistication, it profoundly reshaped our brand identity, drawing in a far more diverse and discerning clientele, and consequently, expanding our burgeoning reputation far beyond the familiar confines of our neighborhood. Joseph Andrew, ever the pragmatic and personable one, married young at 23 to his high school sweetheart, a union blessed almost immediately by the arrival of two beautiful children in quick succession. Despite the undeniable weight of early family responsibilities, demanding as they were, he never wavered in his unwavering commitment to the business. Instead, he seamlessly transitioned into the crucial role of our commercial director, becoming the linchpin, the primary architect responsible for the delicate dance of negotiations with both our array of suppliers and our rapidly expanding roster of corporate clients. His sharp business acumen and innate ability to forge lasting relationships proved invaluable, ensuring the stable flow of resources and opportunities. Beatriz, my youngest, the one whose birth coincided with so much personal upheaval, completed her law degree in 1999. And although she ventured forth to establish her own thriving legal practice, a testament to her sharp intellect and unwavering dedication, she consistently allocated a significant portion of her invaluable time to meticulously oversee all the intricate legal aspects of our burgeoning company. With a meticulous eye for detail, she ensured that every single facet of our operations remained in perfect compliance with the ever-evolving labyrinth of labor and tax laws, safeguarding our growth and reputation. And then there was Deborah, whose initial aspirations were to carve out a formidable career for herself within the structured hierarchy of a large, established corporation. Yet, in a truly pivotal decision that would forever alter the trajectory of our family and our business, she chose to stay, assuming the formidable role her mother, Celia, had so courageously forged, and then, with breathtaking vision, expanded it exponentially. Under her incredibly efficient and strategic administration, we didn't just grow, we flourished. We proudly inaugurated 2 more branches by the end of the 90s, masterfully transforming what began as a small, humble clothing business, born out of the crucible of adversity, into a respected and influential network within the competitive landscape of local commerce. As the new millennium dawned, casting its reflective glow upon the world, I often found myself gazing back, overwhelmed with a sense of disbelief at the sheer magnitude of the transformation my life had undergone. Who was this woman now? From the naive young wife who had once placed her blind faith entirely in her husband's hands, I had evolved into a respected businesswoman, a pillar of strength who had, against all odds, raised 4 children with unwavering dignity and profound love. From the profoundly betrayed and utterly abandoned woman, I had, through sheer force of will and a redefined understanding of kinship, become the proud matriarch of an unconventional, yes, but extraordinarily united family. The scars, I must confess, were still undeniably there. Of course. Were there not countless moments when the piercing memory of that betrayal still delivered a cruel, sharp ache? Were there not times when Celia's profound absence still weighed heavily, a silent, pervasive grief? And, truthfully, there were instances when the sheer fatigue, the cumulative weariness of years of relentless struggle, threatened to overwhelm me, to simply drag me under. But these very scars, these indelible marks etched upon my soul, had long since ceased to be mere wounds. They had transmuted, becoming instead the hard-won badges of a battle fiercely fought and ultimately triumphed. They stood as silent, yet profoundly eloquent, witnesses to my indomitable ability to overcome, to reinvent myself with audacious courage, and, most powerfully, to transform raw, searing pain into an unyielding, unbreakable source of strength. As my mother, with her timeless wisdom, used to often say, God writes straight with crooked lines. What had initially appeared to be the cataclysmic end of my entire world that fateful Saturday afternoon in Indianapolis ultimately unfolded, with breathtaking grace, into the unexpected, vibrant beginning of a more authentic, a far fuller, and, to my everlasting astonishment, a surprisingly happier life than I had ever dared to imagine possible. The new millennium finally arrived, ushering in not just a wave of technological and societal transformations across the globe, but also a period of profound introspection for me personally. At 76 years young, as I gazed back across the vast expanse of my journey, I saw a life so rich, so complex, so utterly unimaginable to that frightened young woman of 1978, the one reeling from the shocking discovery of her husband's betrayal. The year 2000, in particular, shimmered with a special significance for our family. We joyously celebrated 2 decades of new beginning clothing with a magnificent celebration, a truly heartwarming gathering that brought together our cherished old and new employees, our fiercely loyal customers who had become like family, the suppliers who had transcended business relationships to become true friends, and, of course, every beloved member of our gloriously unconventional family. I distinctly recall standing on the small, yet powerfully symbolic, improvised stage, my gaze sweeping across that room, brimming with a sea of smiling faces. In that moment, a wave of such intense gratitude washed over me, so profound and overwhelming, that I could barely articulate a single word. Deborah, my steadfast anchor, was right there by my side, her hand clasped firmly in mine, as if she could telepathically sense the torrent of emotion surging within me. She was the daughter life had so unexpectedly bestowed upon me, not by the ties of blood, but by a destiny that, with incredible grace, had masterfully transformed tragedy into an undeniable blessing. In that precise instant, I felt Celia's vibrant presence as palpably as if she were standing right there beside us, her face illuminated by that warm, enduring smile she had so bravely maintained even through the darkest, most difficult days of her illness. We started, I finally managed to utter, my voice thick with emotion, as 2 broken women, with young children to raise and even more profoundly broken hearts. A collective sigh seemed to ripple through the room. We possessed so little beyond the strength of our own 2 hands, the fire of our fierce determination, and a singular, humble skill with needle and thread. Look at us now, I implored, my voice cracking slightly. Tears, hot and unbidden, streamed freely down my face, but these were not tears of sorrow or regret. No, these were tears of profound recognition, of an immense, overflowing appreciation for the arduous path we had traveled, for the countless lives we had touched and transformed, and for the enduring legacy we were, together, so consciously building. The business, fueled by our shared vision and unyielding spirit, continued its remarkable trajectory of prosperity in the ensuing years. In 2002, demonstrating a keen understanding of market dynamics, we strategically expanded into the corporate uniform sector, a stable and reliable market that provided a crucial buffer, shielding us effectively from the often unpredictable fluctuations of the broader economy. Then, in 2005, under the dynamic and innovative leadership of Mary Elizabeth, we proudly unveiled our inaugural collection of affordable yet undeniably elegant party fashion. This collection, a true testament to her creative genius, became an instant, runaway success, resonating deeply with countless women who yearned for sophistication and timeless elegance without the prohibitive burden of spending fortunes. But more than any commercial triumph, what swelled my heart with an immeasurable sense of pride was witnessing how each of my children, a count which always, unequivocally, included Deborah, had blossomed into an upright, compassionate, and remarkably determined adult, each embodying the very best of what we had strived to instill. Charles Edward, my firstborn, a testament to thoughtful engineering, matured into a highly respected engineer, dedicating his considerable talents to impactful projects designed to genuinely improve the lives of underprivileged communities. In 2003, for instance, he spearheaded a groundbreaking initiative to bring clean, sustainable solar energy to a sprawling settlement nestled on the outskirts of the city, literally illuminating lives. When asked about the wellspring of his deep passion for social projects, his reply was both succinct and profound. "I learned from my mother that difficulties aren't insurmountable obstacles designed to stop you. They are, in fact, springboards, powerful catalysts for growth and innovation." Mary Elizabeth, not content with merely designing beautiful clothes, ingeniously transformed her extraordinary fashion talent into a powerful platform specifically designed to empower other women. Beyond her indispensable functions within the company, in 2006, she conceptualized and launched a transformative project that meticulously taught sewing skills to women in vulnerable situations, many of whom were heartbreakingly survivors of domestic violence. "My mother," she would earnestly tell her students, her voice filled with conviction, rebuilt her entire life, her dignity, her future, with nothing more than a needle and thread. If she could, you can too. Joseph Andrew, always the most communicative and outwardly engaging, naturally became the quintessential public face of our business. It was his natural warmth and persuasive charm that enabled him to expertly negotiate our first major international partnership in 2008, a landmark collaboration with a distinguished European brand specifically seeking ethical production practices here in the United States. While his undeniable natural charisma certainly opened countless doors for us, it was his unimpeachable integrity, his steadfast commitment to doing what was right, that consistently kept those doors wide open. "I learned from my mother," he would often assert, his voice firm with conviction, "that your word, your honor, is your most valuable asset, far beyond any monetary gain." Beatrice, my youngest, born amid the very storm of my personal upheaval, grew into a formidable lawyer, dedicating her formidable intellect and unwavering passion to women's causes. In 2004, she established her own firm, specializing in the intricate and often emotionally charged field of family law, providing critical legal assistance and unwavering support to women facing situations devastatingly similar to the one I had confronted decades earlier. "I grew up watching my mother," she would explain, her eyes reflecting deep understanding, fight a system that was utterly unprepared for, and often unsympathetic to, a divorced woman with 4 children, struggling to rebuild. "My profound desire now is to ensure that other women, when facing similar trials, have the robust legal support and advocacy that she, at that crucial time, simply did not." And Deborah, who grew up, perhaps, with the silent, often heavy, weight of being the daughter of the secret, transformed into a truly visionary businesswoman and a dedicated, compassionate philanthropist. In 2007, a testament to her profound capacity for empathy and action, she established a foundation proudly bearing her mother's name, Celia. This foundation offered invaluable scholarships to children of single mothers, directly easing financial burdens and opening pathways to education. "My mother, Teresa," she would often eloquently declare at the heartfelt scholarship award ceremonies, her voice resonating with gratitude and conviction, "and Teresa taught me, with every fiber of their being, that family isn't merely defined by bloodlines or legal papers. It's defined by..." This profound love was shown through attentive care and my unwavering presence during their most challenging moments. Soon after, a new chapter began to unfold with the arrival of my grandchildren, a delightful cascade of tiny feet and boisterous laughter that didn't just fill the empty spaces in my house but truly permeated every corner of my heart. By 2010, our family tapestry had grown wonderfully intricate, woven with the vibrant threads of 8 precious lives. 4 bundles of boundless energy sprang from Charles Edward, 2 from the spirited Joseph Andrew, 1 sweet soul from Mary Elizabeth, and another from my determined Beatrice. Witnessing them grow, watching them play together on those lively family Sundays, completely oblivious to the extraordinary and often poignant circumstances that had brought their families together, was undeniably one of my life's most profound and enduring joys. In 2012, at the age of 63, a milestone year, I made the conscious decision to gradually reduce my active, day-to-day participation in the company. My children and Deborah, with their astute business acumen and unwavering dedication, were already confidently steering the ship. I, on the other hand, felt an undeniable yearning for more personal time, a precious commodity. It was time to focus on my own well-being, as my health, after decades of relentless effort, was beginning to show subtle signs of wear and tear, and, perhaps most importantly, to fully immerse myself in the pure, unadulterated joy of my grandchildren's company. This wasn't a complete, abrupt retirement, mind you. I still made my way to the store a few times each week, unable to resist the pull of the familiar hum of sewing machines and the scent of new fabric. I continued to meticulously craft those special, bespoke pieces for my most cherished long-standing customers, and I remained involved in pivotal strategic decisions. However, a significant shift had occurred. Now, I finally had the luxury of time for those smaller, yet incredibly rich, joys. Teaching my curious grandchildren the delicate art of sewing their first stitches, nurturing a fragrant, vibrant herb garden on my sun-drenched porch, or engaging in stimulating discussions with fellow book lovers in a reading group at the neighborhood library, these were the moments that truly nourished my soul. It was during this noticeably calmer, more reflective phase of my life that I began to delve deeply into contemplation, pondering the intricate tapestry of my journey and, more significantly, the legacy I aspired to leave behind. This wasn't merely about the tangible, material legacy, the flourishing company, the comfortable house, the carefully accumulated savings that guaranteed a measure of security for my children and grandchildren. No, my thoughts gravitated toward the more profound legacy of values, the invaluable lessons painstakingly learned through trials and triumphs, and the hard-won wisdom forged in the crucible of pain and tenacious overcoming. Then, in 2015, an unexpected invitation arrived, a request to speak at a prestigious event specifically for women entrepreneurs. The very thought filled me with an unfamiliar, almost debilitating nervousness. Public speaking had never been my forte. I had always found solace and purpose in the quiet, intricate work of my hands, coaxing beauty from fabric. But Beatrice, with her characteristic tenacity and unwavering belief in me, insisted. "Mom," she'd urged, her voice resonating with conviction, "your story has the power to genuinely inspire other women, to show them what's possible." I immediately protested, "I'm no eloquent speaker, Beatrice. And honestly, I don't possess the formal education or the academic credentials to address a room full of accomplished college graduates." "Mom," Beatrice countered, her gaze steady, filled with that fierce determination she had so clearly inherited from me, "you possess something infinitely more valuable than any diploma or degree, lived experience. Your journey, your story, it is truly powerful." Reluctantly, yet with a burgeoning sense of curiosity, I ended up accepting. And to my utter astonishment, that single talk, that one moment of stepping outside my comfort zone, unlocked a whole new, invigorating phase in my life. Other women, many of them considerably younger than me, eagerly sought me out. They wanted to hear, in intricate detail, how I had managed to transform profound betrayal into an unyielding source of strength, how I had meticulously built a thriving business from the ground up with nothing but a dream and a sewing machine, how I had bravely raised 4 children entirely on my own during an era when being a single mother was, tragically, still considered almost scandalous, a mark of societal disapproval. The secret, I would tell them, my voice resonating with years of hard-earned wisdom, isn't about never falling. That's an impossible fantasy. The real secret lies in the unwavering courage to get up every single time life, in its relentless unpredictability, knocks you down. And, if you're fortunate enough, to reach out and help bring someone else who has also stumbled back to their feet. In 2018, at the age of 69, I experienced another truly significant milestone, the strategic merger of our beloved company, New Beginning Clothing, with a prominent national fashion brand. It wasn't merely a sale, an impersonal transaction, rather, it was a thoughtfully crafted partnership that allowed New Beginning Clothing to expand its reach exponentially, venturing into new cities across the nation while meticulously preserving its foundational values and its unique, heartfelt essence. The non-negotiable condition we firmly imposed, one that was readily accepted, was that the pioneering policy of hiring women in vulnerable situations, a compassionate initiative first championed by my dear Mary Elizabeth, would not only be maintained but actively expanded upon. The signing of that monumental contract, with all my children and Deborah standing proudly by my side, represented an emotional closing of a full, extraordinary cycle. We had come so far, from that cramped, improvised atelier in our small living room, a makeshift space born of desperation and boundless hope, to a reputable company that would now command a truly national presence. The journey had indeed been long, winding, and utterly extraordinary. In 2020, when the global pandemic descended upon the world, casting its long, uncertain shadow, we, like so many others, faced unprecedented new challenges. With our physical stores suddenly shuttered and the consistent orders for uniforms drastically curtailed, we recognized, with a sense of urgency, that we had to reinvent ourselves, yet again. It was Joseph Andrew, always the visionary, who suggested the crucial transition to online commerce, a strategic move we had, ironically, resisted for years, preferring the personal, intimate connection forged through face-to-face interactions with our cherished customers. The pandemic, in its unexpected cruelty, also brought us full circle, back to our very essence, to the fundamental principle that had always guided us. We quickly shifted our focus, beginning to produce masks, initially for selfless donation to overwhelmed hospitals and vulnerable, underprivileged communities, and then, as the demand surged, integrating them as a vital new product line. The entire family, without hesitation, rallied together and got involved. Even I, at the spry age of 71, found myself back at my sewing machine, stitching daily, a poignant reminder of those early, desperate days when every single piece I produced was absolutely crucial to putting food on the table for my young children. Now, in 2025, I gaze back across the expanse of my life, a rich tapestry woven with threads of both joy and sorrow. And what I see is a life that, despite all the heart-wrenching pain and myriad obstacles, was undeniably rich in profound meaning and unwavering purpose. I never remarried. Oh, there were certainly some relationships over the years, encounters with good, kind men who brought moments of companionship, laughter, and genuine affection into my life. However, I never felt that compelling need to make anything official, to formalize those connections. My family, my children, my beloved Deborah, my precious grandchildren, and the ever-present, cherished memory of Celia filled my heart in a way no fleeting romance ever could. Arnold remains, in our family history, a distant, almost mythical figure, an enigmatic shadow from a past life. As the grandchildren matured and, with their natural curiosity, began to ask probing questions about the grandfather they had never known, we made the conscious decision to tell them the truth, tailored thoughtfully to their respective ages. Our intention was not to perpetuate bitterness or resentment, but rather to honor the complex, often difficult journey that ultimately led us to where we are today. Your grandfather made mistakes, I would gently explain, mistakes that caused a great deal of hurt to many people, including me. But, paradoxically, without those very mistakes, our family wouldn't be the resilient, loving unit it is today. You wouldn't have so many wonderful uncles, aunts, and cousins, a truly expansive family network. And I, in turn, wouldn't have discovered the extraordinary strength I didn't even realize I possessed. It's a strange, almost unsettling thought, isn't it? To realize that I owe a peculiar kind of gratitude to the very man who, in his abandonment, broke my young heart. Not, of course, for the abandonment itself, nor for the web of deceit he wove. But rather, for the undeniable catalyst his actions became in my life. Without that fateful birthday card, tucked away innocently in his coat pocket, without that desperate, impromptu trip to Indianapolis, without that painful, soul-searching confrontation, I might have, in a different reality, lived an entire lifetime in the shadows, quietly accepting far less than I deserved, never truly discovering the boundless depths of what I was genuinely capable of achieving. At 76, sitting here on the familiar, weathered porch of the very house I painstakingly built with the sweat of my brow and the labor of my hands, surrounded by a comforting mosaic of photographs of my children and grandchildren, with Celia's gentle, ever-present memory woven into the small, cherished details of my daily life, I feel a profound, pervasive peace, a peace that, on that devastating day back in 1978, seemed utterly impossible, an unreachable dream. The intricate network of wrinkles etched upon my face are not simply marks of age, they are the eloquent storytellers of countless smiles, of profound tears shed, of innumerable sleepless nights spent worrying and dreaming, and of triumphant, joyous celebrations. My hands, now a little tremulous with the wisdom of age, yet still remarkably skillful enough to patiently guide my 5-year-old great-granddaughter in making her very first, tentative stitches, carry within them the tactile memory of each piece of fabric sewn, each precise cut made, each button meticulously attached. These hands, these resilient hands, fed my beloved children, tenderly dried their tears, built a flourishing business from sheer determination, and, perhaps most importantly, offered unwavering support and a lifeline of hope to other broken women striving to rebuild their lives. If I could somehow travel back in time, to that pivotal moment, and speak to that young Teresa, so frightened, so utterly betrayed, I would say, with a voice softened by experience, the path ahead will undoubtedly be difficult, strewn with obstacles you can scarcely foresee. There will be harrowing days, moments when the sheer weight of circumstances will make you yearn to simply give up, to surrender to the crushing despair. But, I implore you, remember this: you possess an inner reservoir of strength, a profound resilience, far greater than you could ever imagine. This searing pain, which now feels utterly unbearable, a wound that seems too deep to heal, will, in time, be alchemized into something profoundly beautiful, perhaps wisdom, perhaps an unparalleled empathy, or even a newfound purpose. And one day, decades from now, you will cast your gaze back upon this very moment, this seemingly terrible, shattering experience, and truly understand that it was not an end, but in fact, the raw, poignant, and undeniably powerful beginning of your authentic, true life. The greatest lesson I have ever learned, one that I strive to instill in my children, my grandchildren, and now, my precious great-grandchildren, is this profound truth: our individual stories are not, in their essence, defined by the crushing blows we receive, the unexpected betrayals, the sudden losses, the harsh injustices life sometimes hurls our way. No, they are forged and illuminated by how we choose to respond to those blows, by the choices we make in the aftermath of devastation. Sometimes, paradoxically, we need to be utterly broken, shattered into 1,000 pieces, to truly discover the foundational material we are made of, to unearth the unyielding core of our character. It is from the deepest, most agonizing cracks that the brightest, most transformative light can ultimately emerge, illuminating paths we never knew existed. That seemingly innocuous birthday card, tucked away in Arnold's coat pocket, could have marked the devastating, definitive end of my entire story, extinguishing all hope. Instead, in a testament to the human spirit's indomitable will, it became not an ending, but merely the potent first chapter of an epic saga, a living narrative woven with threads of unwavering resilience, courageous reinvention, and the most enduring, unconditional love imaginable. It's a saga that continues to beautifully unfold, generation after generation, through the lives I was privileged to help create and inspire. And perhaps, when all is said and done, this, above all else, is the most precious, enduring legacy I can ever hope to leave behind. Not the tangible assets of the store, not the accumulated money, not even the revered family name itself, but rather the absolute certainty, etched into the very fabric of their beings, that it is profoundly possible to transmute the greatest, most profound pain into an even greater, more meaningful purpose. It's the conviction that it's possible to lose absolutely everything you hold dear and yet, against all odds, rebuild something infinitely more beautiful, more resilient, and more purposeful than what existed before. It's the unwavering belief that, in the end, it is truly possible to transform the deepest, most wounding betrayal into an undeniable, resounding triumph of the spirit. As I so often impress upon my grandchildren, life, with its myriad complexities, rarely follows the meticulously drawn paths we so carefully plan. The true secret to navigating its unpredictable currents isn't found in stubbornly resisting those unexpected, jarring turns, but rather in learning the art of navigating them with a profound sense of grace, an unshakable courage, and an open heart. And always, always remember this: in the darkest, most desolate moments, when everything seems irrevocably lost, when despair threatens to consume you entirely, that is precisely when the greatest, most profound opportunities for radical growth and transformative change are unexpectedly born. And you, my dear viewers, watching me now, remember this crucial truth: no matter the agonizing nature of your pain, no matter the daunting scale of your challenge, there is always a path forward. Sometimes, the most heroic act is simply finding the courage, that deep wellspring of inner strength, to take that very first step, even when your legs are trembling uncontrollably, and your heart feels irrevocably broken. The rest, as I so vividly discovered on that transformative trip to Indianapolis so many years ago, the path itself will graciously reveal to us, one footfall at a time. If this story, these reflections, resonated with you, if they offered a glimmer of understanding or comfort, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to The Grandma's Diary. Your support genuinely helps me continue to share these deeply personal experiences and lessons with all of you. Furthermore, I would be so honored if you would share in the comments where you are watching from and if any particular part of my story touched your heart in a unique and special way. And, please, consider sharing this with someone in your life who might be desperately needing a beacon of hope today. I thank you, from the deepest chambers of my heart, for listening to my journey with such profound kindness and openness.